The rain is thick as ink, a solid wall of noise against the plate glass windows of the Hearth and Harbor. It's 2 in the morning, or maybe 3, on a Tuesday. The graveyard shift. Time blurs when the only light is the fake amber glow of the bar bottles and the hiss of the espresso machine. The restaurant smells like what it is, money and meat, seared beef fat, the sharp tang of old Malbec, and underneath it all, the chemical lemon scent of industrial cleaner, a jazz trio, long since packed up and gone home, still echoes from the house speakers. A lonely saxophone winding around the clink of the last few pieces of silverware being polished by the busboy. I'm counting my tips, a crumpled pile of 5s, 1s and a few stray 20s, damp from the rain on customers' coats. It's not enough. It's never enough. Lila. I look up. Mark, the night manager, is standing by the register, his tie loosened, his face pale and slick with sweat. He's holding a leather-bound check presenter. He doesn't look annoyed. He looks terrified. "We have a problem," he whispers, sliding the presenter onto the laminate surface of the server station. I don't want his problems. I have a stack of my own, waiting in my drafty apartment. "What is it, Mark?" "Booth 4, the VIPs you were handling." My stomach tightens. The men in the long coats, the quiet ones. What about them? "They're gone." "Gone they paid. Right, I ran the ew." "They walked. Lila slipped out right after you brought the last round of coffees. The door by the restrooms." I stare at him. "Walk Mark. That tab was—" "I know what the tab was." He opens the presenter. The bill is astronomical. My breath catches. $9,800.47. I feel the blood drain from my face. That's not a tab. That's a down payment on a car. That's a year of my rent. That's Aunt May's next 6 months of medication, the kind the insurance barely covers 0.25% of. "So call the police," I say, my voice sounding thin. "And say what?" Mark snaps, his fear turning to irritation. "That a table of ghosts vanished. You know who that was, Mercer. You know who you were serving." I shake my head. I'd recognize the name on the reservation. Of course. Scarlatti. A name that hangs in the air in Lake Crest, Illinois. Like the smell of the steel mills over the lake. You hear it. You look away. That was Vito Scarlatti's party. My hands, tucked into the pockets of my black apron, go cold. He doesn't dine and dash. "Mark, it's a mistake." "It's not a mistake. It's a $9,800 hole in my nightly report." He leans in, his own cheap cologne making me want to gag. "And you were their server. It's on your head." "That's not policy. You can't—" "I can," he hisses. "I can hold your paycheck indefinitely. I can call the cops right now and file a report. And when they investigate, they're going to say it's an inside job. They always look at the server first. How easy would it be? Lila, you forget to run the card. They slip you $1,000 in the parking lot. Easy." The threat hangs in the air, sharp and ugly. He's not just threatening my job. He's threatening my life. "I don't have that kind of money," I say, my voice trembling now. "I can hold your check," he repeats, tapping the bill. "And the next one. And the one after that. Or you sign for it. You take responsibility. We'll work out a payment plan. You know, from your wages." He means I'll be working for free for months, maybe a year. I look at the clock. 2:07 a.m. I think of the red-bordered notice from the electric company on my kitchen counter. I think of the pharmacy bill. Already 30 days past due. The men in booth 4, I remember them, 4 of them, all in dark, expensive-looking coats, even inside. They spoke quietly, but the man in the center, he hadn't spoken at all. Vito Scarlatti. He'd just watched. Black shirt, no tie, eyes the color of polished steel. He didn't seem like the kind of man who forgot anything. He seemed like the kind of man who did exactly what he intended. Maybe this was a test. Maybe it was a power play. It didn't matter. The check was here, and he was not. Mark slides a pen toward me. My hand is shaking. I pull it from my pocket. I uncap the cheap plastic pen. My signature is neat, though N-O-T. Lila Mercer. I press down hard. The ink N-O-T'd ing on the thin paper. Each letter is another link in a chain. Mark snatches the slip before the ink is dry. Good choice. Mercer, you can clock out. He turns and walks away, his shoulders already visibly relaxing. He saved his own skin. I stand there for a full minute, the saxophone solo whining about lost love. I clock out. The swinging door to the kitchen smells of bleach and old grease. My locker is damp. I pull on my threadbare coat, shoving my $74 in tips into the pocket. My shoes, cheap black flats, are already soaked from the walk-in 3 hours ago. The parking lot is a black mirror, shattered by the downpour. The wind coming off Lake Michigan is brutal. Even in the city, my car, a 1998 Toyota that's seen better decades, is huddled by the lone, sputtering street lamp. I slide in, the vinyl seat cold and cracked against my legs. I put the key in the ignition. Click. I turn it again. Click, click, whir. Nothing. The battery, dead, of course. I lean my head on the steering wheel. The plastic is frigid. I don't cry. Crying is a luxury. Crying means you think there's a chance things might get better. I'm just tired. Bone tired. The walk is 12 blocks. 12 blocks in the freezing, horizontal rain. My apartment building, the Lake Crest Arms, is a generous name for a brick box that smells of boiled cabbage and damp drywall. The front door lock is broken, so I just push my way into the dim lobby. And I stop. There's a vehicle parked at the curb, right in front of the rusted no parking sign. It's not a car, it's a Fortress. A black, matte finish SUV. It's huge, monolithic, like a block of polished obsidian. It doesn't even look like it's from this planet. The rumor's $3 million for one of these custom armor, reinforced chassis, an interior built for a king. It's idling. I can't hear the engine, but I can feel it. A low, guttural purr, like a panther waiting. This is not my world. I try to walk past it. Head down. Key to the inner door already in my hand. None of my business. The passenger window glides down. The glass is thick, at least an inch. It moves in perfect, terrifying silence. Miss Mercer. I freeze. A man in a driver's suit is leaning across the passenger seat. Earpiece, square jaw. Mr. Scarlatti requests a moment. My stomach clenches so hard I taste bile. This is it. The other shoe. They didn't just walk. They're back. For what? To laugh to finish the job. My hand tightens on my keys, the metal digging into my palm. I scan the alley. It's empty. The streetlight at the corner is busted. This is danger. Every instinct in my body screams, run. But the outline of the room are danger and opportunity. My rent is due Thursday. My car is dead. My paycheck is gone. What exactly do I have left to lose my dignity? Mark took that 2 hours ago. I turn slowly. The back door of the SUV opens. It doesn't swing. It just presents itself. It opens with a heavy, satisfying thunk, like a vault. A pool of warm, golden light spills onto the wet pavement. The smell hits me first. Rich, real leather and cedarwood, sharp and clean, the smell of a forest I've never been to. I take one step, then another. I duck my head and slide inside. The door closes, and the world vanishes. The sound of the rain, the wind, the distant siren gone, sucked into the thick upholstery. It is completely, profoundly silent. He's here, Vito Scarlatti. He's sitting opposite me, in the other captain's chair. He's not looking at me. He's looking at the receipt from the Hearth and Harbor. My receipt, the one I signed. It's resting on the polished, dark wood console between us. He's just as I remember from the booth, still. The black shirt fits him perfectly. His eyes, when he finally lifts them, are exactly as I remembered. Forged steel. They don't hit me. They assess me. Weigh me. Why not let the restaurant handle it? His voice. It's deep, calm, not a hint of an accent, just weight. It fills the silent cabin. I meet his gaze. I am too tired, too cold, and too broke to be intimidated. I'm already ruined. Because I need my job tomorrow. It comes out flat, honest. He studies me for a long beat, 1 second to a tiny, almost invisible nod. He seems to have found the answer he was looking for. He slides an envelope across the console. It's thick, cream-colored, expensive paper. That's for the inconvenience. I pick it up. It's heavy. I open the flap. It's cash, stacks of hundreds, crisp and new. I thumb the first packet. It's far too much. It looks like double the tab. You just bought yourself a problem, Miss Mercer, he says. His voice still that same impossible, level calm, and protection. Protection from Mark. There's something else in the envelope, under the money. I pull it out. It's a card, not paper, it's metal. Heavy, cold, black-brushed metal with an emblem etched into it, a constellation, 3 stars in a line. Orion House. I've heard the name. Whispers. A ghost company, a private fund that buys up shipping terminals. Something not real. My pride, the last little ember of it, kicks in. I count out the money. 9,500, 6, 7, 8, $9,800. I place that stack on the console. I push the rest of the cash and the envelope back across to him. This is what I paid, I say. Vito Scarlatti actually raises an eyebrow, just a fraction of an inch. The rest is for the trouble, he says. The trouble was Mark, not you. My voice is shaking, but I don't care. I don't take tips I didn't earn. My hand closes around the metal card. I'm keeping that, I don't know why. Curiosity, practicality, maybe just to prove this moment was real. He looks at the stack of money I pushed back. He looks at me. A long, silent moment stretches, thick with the smell of leather and cedar. He doesn't seem angry. He seems interested. As you wish. The driver doesn't wait for a signal. The lock on my door clicks open. I slide out, back into the storm. The heavy door clicks shut, sealing him back in his silent $3 million world. The SUV doesn't drive away. It glides. No splash, no engine noise. It just disappears into the inky rain. I'm left standing on the sidewalk in front of my crumbling apartment building. The rain is soaking through my thin coat again, and my shoes are full of water. In my left hand is a damp stack of cash, $9,800. In my right hand is a cold black metal card. The air feels different. The electric company, the pharmacy, the dead car, they're still problems, but they feel small. A small decision. I signed a check, I got into a car, and I know, standing there in the downpour, I just pulled the pin on a grenade. I've stepped into the orbit of the most dangerous man in Lake Crest, and I have no idea if the card in my hand is a shield or the target. I slept with $9,800 under my mattress, and I didn't sleep at all. The rain finally stopped around 4 in the morning, leaving that dead pre-dawn silence where you can hear the city breathing. I kept touching the black metal card on my nightstand, Orion House. It felt heavy, like a mistake I couldn't undo. I used the cash, all of it, before the sun was even up. I was at the 24-hour pharmacy paying off Aunt May's bill. Then I waited by the utility drop box to slide in the payment for the power. I even paid 3 months' rent in advance, slipping the money order under my landlord's door. The relief was sharp, but it tasted like metal. I'd swapped one kind of debt for another. I was back in my apartment, trying to coax my ancient coffee pot to life, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Is this Lila Mercer? The voice was male, professional, and had an echo, like a call center. Who's calling? This is Inspector Davis with the Bureau of Maritime Integrity. We're conducting a routine follow-up regarding your place of employment, the Hearth and Harbor Steakhouse. Maritime Integrity. We serve steak, not fish. What does the harbor have to do with Ma'am, we're interested in the clientele. Specifically, a party that dined last night registered under the name Scarlatti. You were their server, correct? My blood turned to ice water. I serve a lot of tables, sir. This table left without rendering payment, he pressed, his voice suddenly less friendly. A tab of approximately $9,800. We're investigating potential financial irregularities linked to the Port Authority. We need to know what you discussed with Mr. Scarlatti. Discussed, I asked him if he wanted sparkling or still. Did he give you anything, Miss Mercer? Any items, paperwork? A package. I thought of the envelope, the metal card. He gave me a headache. Look, my manager handled the bill. Your manager claims you settled the bill personally. That's unusual, isn't it? For a waitress to cover a nearly $10,000 check. I was trapped. I was protecting my job. I have to go. This investigation is ongoing. We'd appreciate your full cooperation. We may need you to come in. The line clicked dead. I stood there, my hands shaking, the coffee pot gurgling behind me. Bureau of Maritime Integrity? It sounded important. It also sounded completely fake. That's when I noticed. The air in my apartment was different. I'm meticulous. Not because I like cleaning, but because in a space this small, one thing out of place makes it chaos. My mail, which I'd left in a messy pile on the kitchen counter, was stacked, perfectly aligned with the edge. I walked into my tiny bedroom. The pillow I'd punched in frustration at 5 a.m. wasn't flat. Someone had fluffed it. I moved slowly, cataloging the violations. The drawers in my dresser were closed, all the way. I always leave the top one open a crack because it sticks. They'd been here. I dropped to my knees, scrambling under the mattress. The cash was gone, which was fine. I'd already spent it, but they knew. They'd been looking for it. The search was flawless. No mud on the carpet, no fingerprints on the doorknob. They hadn't kicked the door in. They'd used a key. They were professionals. Except they wanted me to know. On the worn wooden floor, next to the leg of my nightstand, was a tiny pile of gray ash, and in the ash, a speck of green. Mint. A mint-scented cigarette. And next to the ash, sitting upright as if it were a warning, was a small, black wooden chess piece. A knight. My heart was hammering against my ribs. A knight moves in an L shape, for Lila, or a warning that they could move around corners, unpredictably. I had to get to work. Routine. That's what I needed. I got to the Hearth and Harbor at 4 p.m. for the dinner shift. My dead Toyota still mocking me from the employee lot. I'd taken the bus. Mark saw me walk in and his face went white. He cornered me by the POS system before I could even clock in. Mercer, you're not on tonight. What? I'm scheduled. It's Tuesday. I always work Tuesday. Not tonight. He was fidgeting. Wouldn't meet my eyes. We've got a surprise safety inspection, health department, fire marshal, the whole 9 yards. I'm cutting staff to the bone. Just go home. Come back tomorrow. A safety inspection on a Tuesday. The slowest night of the week. It was nonsense. Mark, what's going on? Just go, he snapped, his voice cracking. I'm doing you a favor. Okay, just don't be here. I was being pushed out. Joan, who'd been a waitress here since before I was born, was rolling silverware at the bar. She caught my eye and motioned me over with a jerk of her chin. You okay, honey? She murmured, not looking up from her napkins. Mark just sent me home. Said something about an inspection. Joan snorted. Inspection? Right, that's what he's calling them. She paused, then leaned closer. You be careful, Lila. When I came in for my day shift, there were a couple of guys in the alley by the employee entrance. Gray suits, boring shoes. Cops. Not cops, she said, her voice dropping lower. Cops don't take pictures. They were taking pictures of you, honey, when you were on the bus stop this morning, across the street. My stomach hollowed out, the men in gray suits, the bureau. I walked home. I didn't take the bus. I needed the air. The feeling of being watched was a physical weight, like a heavy coat in the summer. Back in my violated apartment, I locked the deadbolt. It felt useless, like putting a Band-Aid on a shark bite. I sat on my couch and pulled out the metal card, Orion House. I didn't know what to do. I held it in my hand, turning it over. Then, acting on a weird impulse, I laid it on the screen of my smartphone. The screen flickered. Then it went black. A single, white, complex QR code appeared, glowing against the dark. It wasn't an app. It was internal. Like the card itself was the key. My camera app opened automatically, scanning the code. A black screen appeared with simple white text, a pinprick on a map. 8 p.m., Pier 9. An appointment, a summons. The panic was rising, a cold tide in my chest. I was being pulled apart by two invisible forces, the bureau guys in their gray suits, and whatever Vito Scarlatti was. I needed to think. I needed to move. I left the apartment and just started walking. I was halfway down my block when I heard crying. Little Sammy Diaz from 3B was sitting on the apartment steps, his face tear-streaked. "Hey, what's wrong, champ?" "It's Buster," he sobbed. He ran off. My mom's gonna be so mad." Buster was a small, hyperactive terrier mix, a notorious escape artist. Okay, let's go find him," I said. It was an excuse to walk, a problem I could actually solve. We walked the alleys, calling his name, and that's when I saw them. They were across the street. Two men. Not in gray suits. These were different. Jeans, dark hoodies, nondescript. They were trying to look casual, one leaning against a lamppost, the other checking his phone. But they weren't casual. Their eyes never left me. I picked up Sammy. Okay, let's try the park. As I carried the kid, I watched them. They didn't move. They weren't following us. They were following me. Sammy, from my shoulder, suddenly yelled, "Buster, there he is!" The dog was sniffing a trash can half a block down. Sammy wiggled. I put him down and he sprinted, screaming the dog's name. The men in the hoodies didn't even flinch. They didn't look at the screaming kid. They didn't look at the dog. Their attention remained locked. 100% on me. That was the moment the fear really crystallized. This wasn't a mistake. I wasn't a witness. I was a target. I got Sammy and Buster back to their door and hurried back to my own. There was a package leaning against my door, a simple brown paper-wrapped rectangle. No name, no return address. I took it inside, my hands shaking so badly I could barely tear the paper. It was a stack of papers, just copies. A contract, a medical services agreement from St. Bridget Mercy Pavilion. My heart stopped. It was Aunt May's file. Her intake forms, her treatment schedule, her confidential medical history. Information that only the hospital's private servers would have. Someone had dug into the one part of my life that was fragile, the one part that was innocent. This wasn't about a restaurant bill. This wasn't about my job. This was a threat. My phone rang again. Unknown number. I snatched it. Who is this? A woman's voice this time. Soft, smooth, almost a whisper. Lila Mercer. What do you want? You're in over your head. The men who visited your apartment, they aren't your friends. But Scarlatti isn't your savior. Who are you? Don't go to Pier 9 tonight. If you value your life, if you value your aunt's life, don't go. The line clicked dead. I stared at the wall. Don't go. Go. One group, the Bureau, was digging into my life. Another group, the Hoodies, was watching my body. A third, this soft-voiced woman, was warning me off, and at the center of it all was Vito Scarlatti, waiting at a dark pier. Call the police. My mind flashed to the inspector from the Bureau of Maritime Integrity. They sounded like the police. What if they were the police? Or what if the police were part of this? The whole system felt unclean. I had no one. The woman said don't go, which meant Pier 9 was exactly where I had to go. It was the only place with a potential answer. Staying here, waiting for the gray-suited men or the men in hoodies to knock on my door, that was a death sentence. I looked at Aunt May's file. They'd drawn the map. They'd picked the battlefield. I went to my kitchen. I grabbed the small, cheap digital voice recorder I used to use for my community college classes. I grabbed the old paring knife with the taped handle. It was dull, but it was steel. And I grabbed the black metal card. At 7:30 p.m., I slipped out the back exit of my building. I didn't walk the main streets. I cut through the alley behind the laundromat. I could hear the echo of my own footsteps, too loud in the narrow passage. A sound behind me, not footsteps, an engine. A motorcycle, low, throaty. I glanced back, a single headlight, half a block away. It wasn't moving fast, it was pacing me. I ducked into the next cross alley. The bike's engine note got higher. It was turning, following me. My heart was in my throat. I ran. My sneakers slapped on the wet pavement, echoing off the brick walls. I saw a chain-link fence at the end of the alley, separating the street from a container yard. I hit the fence and started to climb. The metal was cold, slick with grime. The bike was closer now, its headlight pinning me like an insect. I hauled myself over the top, the rusted chain link tearing at my jeans and scraping a raw, fiery line across my wrist. I landed hard on the gravel inside the yard, biting back a cry. I scrambled behind a massive, dark blue shipping container and pressed my back against the cold, corrugated metal. I held my breath. The motorcycle idled at the fence line for a long, agonizing minute. The headlight swept the yard, a cone of white light passing right over my hiding spot. Then, with a sudden rev-up, it sped off down the street. I waited 5 full minutes, my breath fogging in the cold air, my wrist throbbing. Pier 9 was another 10-minute walk. It was exactly what it was supposed to be, abandoned. The warehouses were dark skeletons. The wood of the pier itself rotted and broken. The only sound was the lake, sighing against the pilings. And then I saw it. At the very end of the pier, parked as if it owned the lake itself. The $3 million SUV. It was matte black, absorbing what little moonlight broke through the clouds. It looked like a resting beast. The back door was open, waiting. I walked toward it, my footsteps echoing on the boards. The paring knife was in my jacket pocket, my hand gripping the handle. The recorder was in my other pocket, its red record light glowing faintly through the fabric. I stopped 10 feet away. Vito Scarlatti stepped out of the SUV. He wasn't in a black shirt tonight. He wore a dark, perfectly tailored suit. He looked at me, and the night seemed to center on him. His eyes didn't go to my face first. They dropped, just for a second, to my hand, the one I'd scraped on the fence. He'd seen the raw, red scratch on my wrist. "Who followed you?" His voice was the same as last night. Calm, waited. I took a breath, letting go of the knife. "2 groups," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. One posing as government agents. They called themselves the Bureau of Maritime Integrity. They searched my apartment. The other, I don't know, a motorcycle. He tailed me through the alleys. Vito Scarlatti nodded, as if I'd just confirmed the weather. He looked from me to the dark, empty warehouses around us. "Tonight," he said, "you're with me. I don't get into the $3 million SUV, not this time." Vito simply motions toward his own driver's side door. "You'll ride with me." It's not the Fortress on wheels. It's a dark gray sedan. So sleek and anonymous, it's almost invisible in the night. It looks like something a high-level bank executive would drive. Expensive, but quiet. The moment I'm inside, I realize it's just as customized as the SUV. The interior is Spartan, all dark metal trim and minimalist black leather. There's a built-in screen displaying what looks like thermal imaging of the surrounding piers. The drive is short. We don't go downtown toward the gleaming towers. We head deeper into the industrial sector, toward the massive, lightless shapes of the container yards. The sedan moves with the same unnerving silence as the SUV. Vito doesn't speak. He just drives, his hands resting lightly on the wheel, his focus entirely on the road and the data streaming across his console. We pull up to a building that looks exactly like all the other warehouses, a vast, corrugated metal box. Warehouse 13. But the fence isn't rusted. It's new, black, and topped with razor wire that looks surgically sharp. The gate slides open without a sound before we even stop. This isn't a mob den. This is Orion House. The interior confirms it. The front third of the warehouse is a cavernous loading bay, clean enough to eat off the polished concrete floor. Forklifts humming electric, Move pallets of sealed, unbranded crates, but the back 2/3, it's all glass and steel. A 2-story office structure has been built inside the warehouse shell. Through the tinted black glass walls, I see people, not thugs. They're young, dressed in sharp business casual. They're staring at glowing monitors, talking on headsets, moving with quiet, corporate urgency. It looks less like a mafia headquarters and more like a high-tech logistics startup. Server rooms blink blue and green in the background. I see engineers. I see accountants. This, Vito says, his voice quiet as he kills the engine, is what we're protecting. We walk through a heavy steel door that unlocks with a hiss as he approaches. The air inside is cool, crisp, and smells of electronics and faint, high-quality coffee. He leads me to a small conference room with one glass wall that looks out over the entire operations floor. A woman is already standing there, waiting. She's in her late 30s, with sharp, intelligent eyes and a dark pantsuit that probably cost more than my car. "This is Mara Quinn," Vito says, "my legal counsel. Mara, this is Lila Mercer." Mara Quinn doesn't offer to shake my hand. She just studies me, her gaze analytical. "The waitress, the one who paid the check." "The Bureau of Maritime Integrity paid me a visit," I say, my voice sounding defensive. "And someone searched my apartment." Mara nods, unsurprised. "Of course they did. Mr. Scarlatti, may I speak frankly?" "Always," he says. "Miss Mercer," Mara says, turning her full attention to me. "When you paid that $9,800 tab, you did something unpredictable. You stepped outside the box. To our competitors, that makes you one of two things: an unknown variable or a new player." "I'm a waitress," I say, my frustration rising. "You were a waitress," she corrects me, not unkindly. "You're now the woman who personally covered a bill for Vito Scarlatti and then met with him. Twice. You painted a target on your own back. They're trying to figure out what your angle is, who you are to him." "So what am I ask, looking at Vito. He doesn't deny the implications. He doesn't dismiss the title of boss. He just states the facts, his voice resonating in the quiet room. "Orion House controls the logistics chain for this side of the lake. We manage shipping, customs, and transport. We make sure things get where they're supposed to go, when they're supposed to." "And your competitor," I ask. "The Hector lineage," Mara says, the name sounding like an insult. "They don't build, they acquire. They use lawsuits, regulatory shutdowns, and hostile takeovers to break supply chains, then buy the pieces for pennies on the dollar. They're trying to choke us out, to steal the port." "The men in the gray suits," I realize. "The Bureau, that's them, using fake laws to dig." "Precisely," Vito says. "And the men who searched your apartment, that's also them. The who doesn't matter. It's the why. They were looking for what I gave you. I gave the money back. I only have the card." "They don't know that. They just know there was a transaction." He gestures for me to follow him. We leave Mara in the conference room and walk down a short, sound-padded hallway. He stops at a plain, heavy steel door and touches a panel. It clicks open. The room is small, not a bedroom, more like a vault. It's windowless, with soundproofed, dark gray walls. There's a single chair, a desk with a built-in monitor, and a sealed water dispenser. "This is a secure room," he says. "The walls are shielded. No signals get in or out unless they're hard-lined through that terminal." He hands me a key card, not a metal one like before, but a simple white plastic card. "You are under my protection now. If you feel you are being followed, if you feel unsafe, you come here. This door is yours." The message is clear. Stay inside my circle and you'll be safe. "Protection," I say, the word feeling strange, like an employee. "No," he says, "like an asset." He reaches into his suit jacket and pulls out another envelope. My stomach clenches. But this one is different. It's a standard business envelope. "You returned my money," he says. "I respect that. This is not payment." I open it. It's not cash. It's a contract, a few pages, printed on heavy bond paper. The title at the top reads Civil Protection and Observation Agreement. It's a legal document. It outlines services, provision of personal security, secure transport, data shielding, and in return, observational feedback. Situational reporting. It's written in dense legalese, but the meaning is clear. He's offering me a job, a fake job, a way to legitimize his protection, to put me officially on Orion's books. I'm not forcing you to sign it, he says, seeing the look on my face. Keep it. Read it. Sign it when you feel you need it. I fold the papers and put them in my pocket, next to the dull paring knife. One question. He waits. The dinner, the $9,000 bill, what was that? And you don't seem like the type to dine and dash. And it doesn't seem like a test for your enemies. It was a test for me. A flicker in his steel gray eyes. Almost a smile, but not quite. It's the first hint of warmth I've seen. It was a counterintelligence probe, he admits. We knew Hector was watching the restaurant. We knew they had an inside man, probably your manager, Mark. We wanted to see how they would react to an anomaly. The unpaid bill was the anomaly. And me, you were the variable. I wanted to see what a normal person would do. Fold, call the cops, run. I needed to see your instinct. And you paid the check, he says simply. You took the hit to protect your own future. You were practical. Then you gave the money back. You were proud. You're not easily bought, and you're not easily broken. You passed. My anger flares, cold and sharp. You used me. You put my job, my life, on the line just to see what I'd do. I put you in a situation I already intended to correct, he says, his voice flat, unapologetic. And in doing so, I found you. Now, let's see who's hunting you. He leads me back to the operations floor, to a desk in a dark corner. A tech with a headset nods at Vito and brings up a new screen. Got the feed from the alley cam. Mr. S. The one you flagged. The footage is grainy, black and white. It's the alley behind my building. It shows me climbing the chain-link fence. The motorcycle's headlight flares, catching my arm as I pull myself over. Enhance, Vito says. The rider, left arm, when he turns. The tech clicks, and the image zooms in. It's blurry, pixelated, but for a split second, as the rider turns his handlebars, his sleeve pulls up. On his forearm, there's a dark tattoo. A lion's head, wearing a crown. Hector's mark. Vito says, it's a statement, not a question. They've escalated. They're not just digging anymore. They're actively tracking you. Before I can process what that means, my phone buzzes in my pocket, the one I brought with me. I pull it out. The screen says, Aunt May. My heart leaps. She's at St. Brigid's. She's not well. I have to take this. It's my aunt. Vito nods, his expression unreadable. I hit accept on the video call. Aunt May's face appears. She's pale, lying back against a hospital pillow, an oxygen tube in her nose, but she's smiling. Lila, honey, I just wanted to see your face. Aunt May, are you okay? Should you be calling? The nurse is right here. Don't you worry. Her image flickers. The screen pixelates, turning green and purple. Aunt May? The audio cuts out, replaced by a high-pitched static whine. Her smiling, frozen image remains, but something new appears, overlaid on top of it. Red text, typed out, letter by letter, like a ransom note. Give us Vito. My blood runs cold. I can't breathe. Or your aunt won't survive the surgery. The call disconnects. I'm staring at my black screen. My hand is shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. They hacked the hospital's network. They got into her room. Vito has been watching me. He saw my face change. He saw the color drain from it. What was it, he demands? I can't speak. I just show him the phone, as if the message is still burned onto the screen. They threatened my aunt. They said she wouldn't because of you. The atmosphere in the room changes. The corporate chill vanishes, replaced by something cold and heavy. Vito's stillness becomes absolute. He looks at me, his eyes dark. He takes a breath. They're hitting my people, he says. His voice is dangerously quiet. I'm not your people, I whisper. the tears finally coming, hot and angry. She's not. She's innocent. They don't care, and Vito says. He turns to the tech. Get me Director Evans at St. Bridget. It's 3 a.m, sir, the tech stammers. Then wake him up. Vito turns back to me. The St. Bridget Mercy Pavilion. It's a private hospital. Top tier. My family endowed the cardiac wing. He's not bragging. He's explaining. They can't just move her, can they? I say, my mind racing. She's prepped for surgery tomorrow. She's fragile. She's more fragile where she is. The tech nods and Vito takes the call, moving a few feet away, but I can hear his side of it. Evan Scarlatti, I have a priority 1 situation. Yes, a patient. May Mercer, she is being moved to your pavilion. Tonight. Now yes, she's critical. I need your best cardiac suite and a full private security detail on her door. My men and yours. No, this is not a request. Thank you for your understanding. He hangs up. The entire call took less than 30 seconds. He's just ordered a critically ill patient transferred in the middle of the night with a single phone call. The sheer, effortless power of it is terrifying. But Aunt May will be safe. The Hector lineage can't hack a hospital that Vito Scarlatti owns. I feel this bizarre, conflicting wave of fear and profound relief. A private ambulance is on its way to her now, he says. My team will ride with it. They will not leave her side. I just nod, wiping my face. Now, he says, we have an agreement, temporary. He holds out his hand, not for the contract, for a handshake. You're a target because of me, he says. Hector thinks you're my weakness, my way in. So we're going to use that. You'll be my eyes and ears on the outside. You'll be the variable they can't predict. And you, I ask, my voice still rough. I'm your shield, he says. I look at his hand. This is the deal. This is the moment I stop being a waitress and become something else. I place my hand in his. His grip is firm, warm, and brief, a pact. He walks me back to the anonymous sedan. The wind has picked up, cutting in off the lake. It's cold, and it slices right through my thin jacket. I shiver. The adrenaline finally fading, leaving me exhausted. I'm about to get in the car when he stops. He takes off his own suit jacket. It's dark wool, heavy and impeccably tailored. Before I can protest, he drapes it over my shoulders. It's not a gentle or sentimental gesture. It's practical. An order. You are cold. Take this. But it's warm. It's so warm. It smells like him, not cologne, but clean. Sharp cedar and something metallic. I look up to thank him, and I'm suddenly closer to him than I've ever been. I'm standing inside his personal space. I can see the faint lines at the corners of his eyes. I can see that his eyes aren't just steel. There's a ring of darker gray around the pupil. The air crackles. The world narrows to the few inches between us. The sound of the wind, the humming of the warehouse. It all fades. There's a spark. A silent, sudden pull that has nothing to do with threats or contracts. My breath catches in my throat. He sees it. His gaze drops to my mouth for a half a second. Then he blinks. The mask slams back down. He takes a deliberate step back, breaking the spell. Get in the car, Lila, he says, his voice flat again. The night's not over. He didn't take me home. My apartment was a compromised box, a fishbowl. He took me to a place that didn't exist. A residential tower downtown, all black glass and steel, where the elevator required a thumbprint and opened directly into a penthouse apartment. It was sterile, cold, and massive. It looked like no one had ever lived there. The furniture was all low profile, gray and sharp. This is a clean room, he'd said, leaving me in the enormous living room that overlooked the lake. No one knows I own it, not even Mara. Rest. You're no good to me, exhausted. He left. I stood there, dwarfed by the silence and the 20-foot windows, still wearing his suit jacket. It smelled of cedar and cold air. I didn't sleep in the king-sized bed. I slept on the $1,000 couch, still wrapped in that jacket, my dull paring knife on the glass coffee table next to the black metal Orion card. A text came through at 6 a.m. on the newly sealed phone he'd left on the counter. St. Bridget, she's secure. Surgery moved to 10 a.m. The relief was so profound, so absolute, I felt my knees buckle. I sat on the floor, the plush carpet absorbing the sound of my first real, shaky breath in 2 days. Aunt May was safe. She was in the one place in Lakecrest that Hector couldn't touch. She was in Vito Scarlatti's fortress. That meant I was free to move. When he returned at noon, I was showered, dressed in my same clothes from the pier, and drinking his absurdly expensive coffee. "I'm going back to the Hearth and Harbor," I said. Vito stopped in the entryway. He was back in a perfect dark gray suit. He looked like he'd just stepped out of a boardroom, not a pre-dawn tactical operation. "No," he said. "It wasn't a suggestion." "You're wrong," I said, my voice steady. "Your Hector lineage friends, the gray suit bureau. They're watching my apartment. They're probably watching the bus stops. They're definitely watching St. Bridget's. They're waiting for me to run or to hide." "Which is why you'll stay here." "No, because the one place they aren't watching, the one place I'm just part of the scenery, is the restaurant. They think I'm fired or scared or both. They don't expect me to show up and ask for a fill-in shift. It's the only place I can listen. Vito, it's where this started." He studied me, his face impassive. I was challenging a direct order. The man I'd seen move last night, I knew what he was capable of. But I also knew I was right. "Mark, your manager, is their man," he said. "He'll report you're there in 5 minutes." "Good, let him. It shows I'm desperate for cash. It shows I'm just a stupid waitress in over her head, trying to get her job back. It's the perfect cover." A long, silent beat. "You'll be wired. My team will be in the kitchen and in a car across the street. You wear the earpiece, you hear trouble, you walk. You don't stop, you don't talk, you walk." "Fine." "And Lila," he said, his voice dropping, "you're not going to get your job back. I spoke to your owner this morning. Mark is no longer your manager." My jaw tightened. "You had him fired." "I had a problem removed," he corrected. "The new manager has been instructed to give you a double shift for inventory. You'll be in the back, mostly plausible." My return to the Hearth and Harbor was surreal. The lunch staff looked at me with a new kind of awe. Mark was gone. Just gone. The new manager, a nervous woman I'd never seen before, just pointed me toward the dry storage. I didn't stay in the back. I bussed tables, I ran food, I listened, and I watched for Dante Rook. He came in at 2:30, like clockwork. Rook was a harbor institution, a man who traded in information. He always sat at table 10, drank single malt scotch for lunch, and spoke too loudly. Today, he was agitated. I waited until his glass was low, then moved in. "Another Macallan, Mr. Rook." He looked up, distracted. Yeah, and tell your chef the oysters are soft. Soft, like the port commissioner's spine." He was talking to someone on his phone, an unlit cigar in his other hand. I lingered, wiping down the empty table next to him. "I don't care what the manifest says," Rook barked into his phone. "Hector is turning the screws on everyone. They're not looking for product. You idiot. They're hunting a ghost container. That's the word on the water." My hand stopped, just for a second, on the table. "Yeah, a ghost," he continued. "Supposed to be holding some kind of digital ledger. The whole logistics book. Triple locked. They say whoever gets their hands on it, they don't just win. They own the lake. Now, find my shipment." I moved away, my heart hammering a new rhythm. Ghost container, digital ledger. I went to the server station, my mind racing, the bill, the $9,800. It was a test. It was a probe. But what if it was more? What if it was information? The number itself, 9800. It was too clean, too perfect. I thought about the bill. I didn't have it. Vito did. But I remembered it. The total, $9,800.47. The cents, they weren't important. 9800. I looked at the delivery schedule taped to the wall, the one showing a map of the Lakecrest Port Authority. It was a grid, piers, sections, channels. 9, 8, Channel 9, berth 8. It was a start. 00, midnight. I felt a buzz in my pocket, the new phone, a text from Vito. Lobby, 5 minutes, seat. My shift wasn't over. I ignored it. I went into the manager's office. The new manager wasn't there. I looked at the reservation book for the night of the dinner. Scarlatti, booth 4, 8 p.m. I flipped back. I found the master copy of the receipt, the one I'd signed. My signature was a dark, angry scrawl at the bottom. The total $9, 800.47. But the bill number, the string of digits at the top, BN 98340300. I stared at it. It wasn't a random string. It was a code. 9834 0300. My breath caught. It wasn't Channel 9, berth 8. It was Pier 34. And 0300, 3 a.m. 98 Section 9, Row 8. It was a coordinate and a time. I had it. I ripped the page out of the book. My phone buzzed again, angrily. Now. I ran out of the office and straight into the new manager. Inventory's done, I lied, and pushed past her, heading for the employee exit in the alley. I was flying. I had the answer. I burst out into the alley, the cold air hitting my face. And I ran right into them. The gray suits, Inspector Davis and his partner, they weren't smiling. Miss Mercer, Davis said, his voice flat and dead. We told you we'd need you to come in. You've been difficult to locate. I'm busy, I said, trying to shoulder past him. His partner grabbed my arm, my bad arm, the one scraped raw from the fence. I cried out, a sharp gasp of pain. We insist, Davis said, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. You're interfering in a federal investigation. She said she's busy. The voice came from everywhere. It was Vito's. A shadow detached itself from the alcove by the dumpsters. He was in a long, dark coat, not his suit. At the same time, the silent $3 million SUV crept into the mouth of the alley, blocking the only exit, its headlights snapped on, blinding. The two agents froze, hands dropping to their jackets. I wouldn't, Vito said, his voice calm. From the SUV, Vito's driver emerged, the square-jawed man, and he wasn't armed, and he didn't need to be. The agent holding me let go, turning to face the driver. It was a mistake. The driver moved with a speed that didn't seem human. He didn't punch. He used the agent's own momentum, redirecting him, and slammed his head hard against the brick wall. The agent crumpled. Inspector Davis fumbled for his weapon. Vito was on him. It was precise. An elbow to the wrist, breaking the draw, a hand to the throat, slamming him back against the SUV's reinforced fender. There was a crack as his head hit the steel. It was over in 2 seconds. No blood, no shots. Just two men, unconscious on the wet pavement. The back door of the SUV opened. I scrambled in, my heart pounding, the torn receipt clutched in my hand. Vito slid in after me, his face a mask of cold fury. The door sealed, and the world went silent. That was reckless, Lila, he said, his voice a low growl. You were told to leave. It worked, I said, breathless, shoving the receipt at him. I found it. It's not just the money. It's the bill. Look, bill number 98-34-0300. I saw his eyes focus on the number. The mask cracked. Pier 34, I said. 3 a.m., and I bet 98 is the coordinate. Section 9, row 8, it's the ledger. Dante Rook, that rumor broker. He said Hector is hunting for it right now. Vito stared at the paper, then at me. The anger was gone, replaced by that intense, calculating assessment. I'm not a piece of porcelain you can hide in a safe. Vito, I said, my voice shaking but strong. I told you I'd be your eyes. I found it. He nodded, just once. It seems you did. We were back at Orion House. Mara Quinn was waiting in the glass conference room. She's right, Mara said, her fingers flying across a keyboard. Delta Pier 34. It's a restricted zone, scheduled for a customs sweep. But yes, an off-manifest container from the Dockway Consortium was logged an hour ago. It's scheduled for transport at 3 a.m. The ledger, Vito said. Why is it so important, I asked. Looking between them, it's just numbers. Right. It's not just Hector's money, Vito said, his eyes dark. It's their chain. Hector has been forcing shell agencies like your maritime integrity friends to provide illegal insurance policies for their high-risk smuggling. Then Hector arranges for the shipments to be lost. They cash out, the shell agency folds, and Hector buys the assets. The ledger proves it. It's the string that ties Hector's street muscle to a dozen legitimate shell corporations. It's the weapon we use to cut the head off the snake, Mara finished. I'm going, I said. No, Vito said. Yes, I held up the receipt. The lock. What's the combination? It's the total 9800. They're arrogant. They put the key right on the receipt. I'm the one who sees it. I'm the one who paid it. I'm going. Vito stared at me. I could feel the power rolling off him, the absolute authority, and I was defying it. One condition, he said, his voice final. You do not leave my side. You move when I say. You breathe when I say. Understood. Understood. 2 a.m. We were at the edge of the Delta 34 yard. I was in a black thermal jumpsuit, a baseball cap pulled low, and a fake ID clipped to my belt. Dockway Consortium, safety inspector. Vito was a shadow, all black, all business. He handed me a tiny earpiece. Comms, channel 3. My ears only. Don't speak unless you're spoken to. I fumbled to put it in, my hair getting in the way. Stay still, he commanded. He stepped close, pushing my hair back. His fingers brushed my ear, the side of my neck. My skin lit up. He was adjusting the radio on my belt. His hands were professional, impersonal. But he paused. His gaze fell to my wrist, to the angry red scrape from the fence. His thumb brushed over the wound, just a feather-light touch. My breath hitched. It wasn't practical. It wasn't an order. It was something else. The air between us was electric, just like it had been outside the warehouse. I was trapped between his body and the metal wall of a container, his scent of cedar and cold night air filling my lungs. I looked up, and his steel-gray eyes were locked on mine. He was too close. The whole world stopped, narrowing to the inches between us. I broke it first. I pulled my hand away, my heart doing a stupid, betraying flip. I'm fine. Let's go. He nodded. The moment gone. The mask was back. Delta Pier 34 was a graveyard of steel, smelling of diesel, salt, and the faint rot of the lake. The only sound was the creak and groan of cables as ships shifted in the dark. Vito's team, 4 shadows, including his driver, moved like they were part of the night. We found it, Section 9, Row 8. It was a dark red container. The ID number, or quatriant. That's not the Dockway ID, I whispered into my throat mic. It's a decoy shell. Vito's voice was a ghost in my ear. The ghost container. On the side, a heavy-duty keypad lock. Headlights, one of his men hissed. A truck, its lights off, rolled into the yard. 6 men piled out. Hector's team. They were carrying bolt cutters and a pry bar. Vito didn't hesitate. Take them. Quietly. What happened next, it wasn't a fight, it was an execution. Vito and his team moved like wolves. It was all silent, brutal efficiency, joint locks, precise strikes, disabling holds. Vito himself moved like a panther, taking down 2 men before they even knew he was there. It wasn't about causing pain. It was about ending the threat. It was terrifyingly clean. In 30 seconds, it was over. 6 men, zip-tied and unconscious. Lila, the lock! I ran to the container. There was a small ladder built into the side. I climbed, my fingers numb. The keypad was glowing green. 9800. I typed it in, the light flashed red. Access denied. My blood froze. It's not working, I hissed. Think. Vito's voice was calm in my ear. He was right below me. They're arrogant. What else? 9800. It had to be. Try it again, but he said. 9800. Denied. Vito, it's wrong. Lila. His voice was sharp. The check, the knight, the L shape. The chess piece? Of course, an L shape. On the keypad 9, an L shape from 9 would be 6, 3, or 8, 7. No, a reordering. The bill number, 98. The total, 98. Wait, I'm an idiot. It's not 9800, it's 9847. The cents. I tried it. Denied. I was sweating, my fingers slipping. It's not working. The night, he pressed. What did they leave in your apartment? A black night. What's the opposite? A white knight. The other night, the other bill, the one he tried to give me, the double amount. 19600. I typed it. Denied. Vito? Wait. His voice was tense. He was looking at the container ID. Or Steam. Lila, he said. The number I gave you, the code on the card, Orion and the bill, 9800. Rearrange it. The knight's move. 98 and L shape 0890. I punched it in. 0890. A loud click hissed through the night. The light turned green. Access granted. The heavy locking bar retracted. I grabbed the handle and yanked the heavy door open. Vito was on the ladder right behind me, a flashlight in his hand. He aimed the beam inside. It was empty. A vast, echoing, empty steel box. No, not empty. In the precise, dead center of the container was a single, small object. A white wooden chess piece, a knight. My stomach dropped to my feet. It's a trap. And then I heard it. Not a truck, not a whisper. A ship's horn, blaring, deafeningly close. And sirens, a dozen of them from every direction. Floodlights snapped on, one after another, turning the dark pier into a brilliant, harsh stage. We were pinned high up on the container, exposed. Bureau of Maritime Integrity, a voice roared over a loudspeaker. Hands in the air, you are surrounded. The gray-suited men. They were pouring onto the pier. Not 2 this time, but 20. They were wearing fake tactical vests and carrying very real weapons. Vito didn't swear. He didn't hesitate. He didn't even look at them. He looked at me. He grabbed my hand, not the scraped one. His grip was a steel clamp. Lila, he said, his voice a low, absolute command. Trust me. And he yanked me off the ladder, into the dark. 2-story drop between the containers. We didn't fall. The space between the containers was a narrow, dark canyon, but a row of stacked, empty pallets broke our landing. It was still a 12-foot drop. The impact shot up my legs and rattled my teeth, but nothing broke. Vito was on his feet before I'd even processed the landing, pulling me up. This way, move. His team was gone. They had vanished. We were alone, plunged into a maze of steel boxes, the air filled with the roar of the fake maritime integrity agents and the blare of sirens. He didn't run toward the exit. He ran deeper into the yard, toward the water. We moved for what felt like an hour, ducking through unlit tunnels, climbing over chain-link fences, and wading through a foul-smelling maintenance channel that came up to our knees. My thermal suit was soaked, my hands were numb, and the cut on my wrist was screaming. Finally, we emerged onto a deserted, unlit street. Miles from the pier, the anonymous gray sedan was waiting, parked in the shadow of a derelict overpass. How it got there? How his driver knew? I didn't ask. The drive was silent. I was shaking, the adrenaline draining away, leaving me freezing cold and sick. The trap, the white knight, it was all for nothing. They played us, I whispered, my voice hoarse. They knew we'd cracked the code. They wanted us there. They wanted to pin us for what? Breaking into an empty box. They wanted to expose me, Vito said, his voice flat. He was staring out the window, his jaw tight. They wanted to put my face on camera, surrounded by fake federal agents, creating a legal problem that Hector could exploit, a public-facing raid. It was smart. So they have the ledger. They have had the ledger, he corrected. They moved it long before we ever got there. We didn't go back to the sterile penthouse. We didn't go back to Orion House. He drove us to a part of the city I'd never seen, a historic district of old brick buildings and gaslight-style street lamps. The lantern rooms. It wasn't a hotel, not really. It looked like an old, exclusive private club, with a dark wood door and a single polished brass plaque. His driver met us at the curb, took the keys, and vanished. Vito used his thumb on a discreet panel, and the door clicked open. The inside was warm. Low lighting, antique rugs, the smell of old books and beeswax. A silent man in a velvet jacket handed Vito a key. No words, no check-in. He led me to a room at the end of a long, carpeted hallway, a corner suite. He opened the door and stood aside. It was beautiful. A wall of windows looked out over the dark, churning lake. The rain had started again, lashing against the thick glass. The room was furnished with heavy, dark wood furniture, a fireplace with a gas-fed flame already flickering, and a bed that looked big enough for 5 people. My heart was still pounding in my ears, a frantic drumbeat that wouldn't stop. I was still in the soaked, foul-smelling jumpsuit. I walked to the window and just stared out. The water was black and angry, just like the feeling in my chest. "They beat us," I said. "They won this round," he said from behind me. I heard a soft click. He'd set something down on the desk. I turned. He was holding a small, flat, tin box, like something you'd keep old coins in. He slid it across the polished wood toward me. I opened it. Inside, on a bed of black velvet, was a small wooden chess piece, a black knight. I looked up at him, confused. "It's identical to the one they left in your apartment," he said. "My team retrieved this one from the port commissioner's private office after Hector paid him a visit last week, the white one in the container. The black one in your room, it's their signature. They don't just take something. They leave a mark. They're telling us they were there first. They're telling us they're toying with us." I closed the box. It felt like defeat. "The knight," I said, thinking out loud, my brain still buzzing. "It moves differently. Not in a straight line. It moves in an L. It moves off route." Vito's eyes sharpened. He picked up the train of thought instantly. The manifests. We were looking at the main shipping manifests, the ones for the Dockway Consortium. "But the knight means a crooked path," I said, turning back to the window. "A diagonal. They didn't move it on a ship. They didn't move it through the regular channels. They moved it overland," he finished. "A cross-country truck, something that left the pier on an inland route, disguised as domestic freight, something off manifest." The puzzle piece clicked. We weren't beaten. We just had a new map. My pocket buzzed. Not my old, compromised phone. The new one he'd given me. I pulled it out. An encrypted message. Just one line of text. "St. B's, package secure, surgery a success, vitals strong. Package secure, Aunt May." The tension of the last god. Has it only been 2 days? It all snapped. The fear for her life, the adrenaline, the chase, the cold, it all hit me at once. My throat closed up. I didn't sob. I just couldn't hold the air in my lungs. My eyes burned, hot and sudden. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass of the window, my shoulders shaking. I didn't hear him move. He was just suddenly there, not touching me, standing about 1/2 meter away. He held out a white, perfectly folded handkerchief, cotton, not silk. I took it, my fingers fumbling. "Thank you," I managed to whisper. I wiped my face, feeling stupid and weak. "She's safe, Lila," he said. His voice was different, softer, that hard, command center tone was gone. "They can't touch her, I promised you that." I just nodded, unable to speak. And then the room went black. Not just the lights in the room, the entire city. The power cut out completely. The faint hum of the building died. The gas fireplace hissed and went out. The only light was the distant, stormy sky over the lake. The silence that followed was absolute. And in that silence, the sound of the rain against the glass became a roar, a violent, drumming assault. The adrenaline was gone, the shock was wearing off, and I was just cold. The soaked jumpsuit was clinging to me, and I started to shiver. It was a deep, bone-rattling shake I couldn't control. "The power," I stammered, my teeth chattering. "Building backup generator. It'll be a minute." His voice was a calm shadow in the dark. I heard him move. A metallic scrape. A click. The blue-white cone of a small flashlight cut through the darkness. He wasn't aiming it at me. He was aiming it at a low cabinet. He pulled out a heavy wool blanket. "Get out of the wet clothes," he ordered. But the command was practical, not harsh. He tossed the blanket onto the chair. "There's a robe in the bathroom." While I was in the bathroom, gratefully peeling off the freezing, filthy suit and wrapping myself in a terry cloth robe that felt a mile thick, the lights flickered back on. Not the bright overheads, but the soft, warm table lamps, the building's private generator. When I came out, he had moved. The tin box with the night was gone. He was in the small kitchenette, filling an electric kettle with bottled water. He'd taken off his own dark tactical coat. He was just in a black, long-sleeved shirt that fit him like a second skin. He looked less like a boss, more like a man. He didn't say anything. He just focused on the task. He took out 2 mugs, a small jar of what looked like honey, and a piece of fresh ginger root. He sliced the ginger with a small, sharp knife. His movements precise and economical, meticulous. He made tea. He brought one of the steaming mugs over to me, where I was huddled in the armchair, wrapped in the robe and the wool blanket. "Ginger," he said. "It'll help with the cold." I took the mug. My hands were still shaking, but the warmth of the ceramic was an anchor. I sipped. It was hot, sweet, and fiery. It burned a path straight to my stomach, and for the first time, the shivering started to subside. He sat in the other armchair, opposite me, nursing his own mug. The only sounds were the rain and the soft hiss of the newly relit gas fire. It was the first time we'd been together and not in danger, the first time we'd stopped moving. "You did well tonight, Lila," he said quietly, not looking at me, but at the fire. "You saw the clue. You found the path." "We still failed," I whispered. "We were given new information." He finally turned his head. His eyes, in the warm firelight, weren't just steel. They were deeper, and you didn't panic. Not when the agents came. Not when we jumped. "I didn't have time to panic," I admitted. "Everyone has time. You just didn't." He set his mug down. He leaned forward, just slightly. The space between us, which had been a safe, neutral zone, suddenly felt charged. The air was thick. "Lila." My name. He said it so rarely. When he did, it felt like a physical touch. I looked up from my mug. His eyes were on my face, not assessing me, not calculating, just watching. His gaze dropped, for just a second, to my mouth. My breath caught. The heat from the tea, the fire, it was nothing. A new heat was blooming in my chest. I could feel the pulse in my own throat. He was so still. But I could feel the energy coming off him, a tightly coiled spring. He reached out, slowly. He didn't just take... He moved his hand, palm up, into the space between us. His fingers, warm and calloused from what I had no idea they brushed my cheek, a touch so light it was barely there. It was just warmth. It stopped all the shaking, inside and out. My skin tingled where he touched me. I didn't pull away. I think I leaned into it. His eyes held mine. He was asking, with his eyes, with the tension in his hand. "May I?" he whispered. The words, the permission. It shattered the last of my defenses. This wasn't the boss. This wasn't the general. I didn't trust myself to speak. I just nodded, once. He moved from his chair to kneel in front of mine. He didn't lunge. He moved like the world had slowed down. He brought his other hand up, cupping my face. His thumbs brushed the high curves of my cheekbones. And then he kissed me. It was slow. It was deep. It was, above all, respectful. It wasn't a kiss of possession or demand. It was a kiss of discovery. His lips were soft, firm, and tasted faintly of the ginger from his tea. It sent a jolt, not of electricity, but of warmth, straight down my spine. 1,000 tiny, warm goosebumps erupted on my skin. I instinctively leaned into him, my own hands coming up to rest on his shoulders. The wool of his shirt was soft. I could feel the strength in his arms, the solid, unshakable presence of him. The kiss deepened, but it never turned rough. It was an exchange. It was the rain on the window, the fire in the grate, the safety of the room, all rolled into one. When he pulled back, it was only by an inch. We were breathing the same air. His forehead rested against mine. "You're safe," he whispered, his voice rough. That's all it took. I wrapped my arms around his neck, burying my face in the curve of his shoulder. He responded, his arms encircling me, pulling me from the chair and into his embrace. He held me. He just held me, tightly. His hands were a solid, warm pressure on my back, one at my waist, one between my shoulder blades, holding me as if he could physically press the safety into my skin. I could feel his heart beating, a steady, slow, powerful rhythm against my own. We just stayed there, wrapped in the wool blanket, breathing each other in. The windows fogged over from the heat of the fire, obscuring the storm outside. We were in a warm, quiet bubble. It was a promise, sealed in the dark. We didn't move for a long time. Eventually, we just shifted. We ended up on the thick rug in front of the fire, leaning back against the sofa, not sleeping, just being still. The blanket was draped over both of us. I was lying with my head resting on his shoulder, his arm still securely around my waist. The silence was comfortable. "My father," he said, his voice a low rumble in my ear. He wasn't like me. He was a dock worker. He believed in the unions. He believed in the rules. I turned my head. Looking at his profile in the firelight, his jaw was hard, but his eyes were far away. He worked the Lake Crest canals his whole life. He watched men in clean suits, men like Hector, use laws and contracts to steal the port. Piece by piece, they'd use regulations to bankrupt a small shipping company, then buy it for pennies. Legal thieves. He paused, his hand tightening almost imperceptibly at my waist. He died trying to fight them with their own rules, a stress-induced heart attack at 49. I promised him. At his funeral, I would never let them win. I would protect the port, but I would never use their rules to do it. I looked at him, the man who moved patients in the night, who ran a high-tech logistics empire from a warehouse, who moved in shadows and commanded absolute loyalty. I smiled, just a little, a sad smile. "You're a hero in a devil's coat, Vito." He turned his head, his face now inches from mine. His steel gray eyes were very clear. "No, Lila," he said, his voice soft but absolute. "I'm just a man who knows this world is full of things that devour, and I'm the man who gets to choose who doesn't get eaten." The embers in the fireplace at the lantern rooms had turned to gray ash. The quiet, safe bubble we'd built had to pop. We hadn't slept. By 4 a.m, we were back at the sterile penthouse, the clean room that overlooked the city. Mara Quinn was there, looking as sleepless as we felt, a laptop glowing in the pre-dawn darkness. "The diagonal route," I said, pacing the cold marble floor. I was running on pure adrenaline and the memory of that ginger tea. The night's move. They didn't use a ship. They used a truck. But you can't just drive a container out of a secure port. "You can," Mara said, her fingers a blur on the keyboard, "if you own the transport company, or at least if you own the dispatcher. Hector can't touch Orion Shipping, so they're using ground routes." We started digging, not into the massive, known shipping lines, but into the small, independent trucking firms, the ones that slipped through the cracks. "North Meridian Lines," Mara announced, tapping her screen. "Small-time, mostly refrigerated goods, based out of Gary, Indiana. Clean record, except they had one truck leave Delta 34 last night, an off-manifest haul." Vito, who had been a black silhouette against the floor-to-ceiling windows, turned. "When?" 3:17 a.m., Mara said. Her voice was tight with grim satisfaction. 17 minutes after our team was spotted. Hector used our raid as the diversion. While their fake bureau was pinning us down with sirens, this truck slipped out the back gate. Where is it? Vito's voice was flat, cold. It's dark. The truck's GPS isn't broadcasting, but its registered route is inland. It has to cross the Riverside No. 7 bridge to get out of the county. Riverside 7, Vito said. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Mara? Already on it, she replied. The city's traffic cameras on that bridge are flickering. Seems to be an emergency maintenance issue. As of 10 minutes ago, it's a complete blind spot. The plan came together with a speed that left me breathless. This was their world. Finn Astor will drive the primary vehicle, Vito ordered, referring to a name I didn't know. He'll stage a breakdown in the eastbound lane. He'll block the path. And me? I asked, stepping forward. Vito looked at me. The North Meridian rig is a refrigerated construction and supply truck. You'll be driving a city works vehicle. I'll have one delivered. You'll pull up. Official looking. Your job is to keep the driver occupied. Keep his eyes on you, facing forward. And you? I'll be his blind spot. 2 hours later, I was on the bridge. The wind was howling, and I was sitting in a bright yellow city utility truck, a hard hat on the seat beside me, and a reflective vest that smelled like stale coffee pulled over my clothes. My hands, shoved into thick work gloves, were sweating. Target is 5 minutes out, approaching the bridge. Mara's voice crackled in my new, discreet earpiece. The bridge was dark, just as she'd promised. 2 lanes were blocked by orange maintenance cones. I saw the vehicle Vito had mentioned, a big flatbed parked at an angle, its hazard lights flashing rhythmically in the dark. That had to be Finn Astor. Then, headlights, the North Meridian semi. It was a big, white, anonymous rig. It slowed, the hiss of its air brakes cutting through the wind, and pulled up behind the stalled flatbed. Now, Lila, Vito's voice commanded in my ear. I put the utility truck in gear, flipped on its flashing yellow roof lights, and pulled up right behind the semi. I grabbed a clipboard with blank paper on it and hopped out. The truck driver, a big man in a flannel shirt, leaned out of his window, and he looked annoyed. What's the holdup? I'm on a priority schedule. Sorry, sir, I called up, pitching my voice to sound tired and bored. Whole bridge is a mess. City crew hit a water main. You're going to be here a while. I need to see your manifest and your driver ID, just to check you against our bypass list. Bypass list? What bypass list? Nobody told me about a bypass list. He was already angry. Good. I know. Right, I sighed, making a show of flipping through my blank pages. They never tell us anything. You got your logbook. I gotta call this in. While he was distracted, fumbling in his cab for papers, I saw it, a shadow detaching itself from the steel girders under the bridge. It was Vito. He'd climbed up from the maintenance catwalk below. He was on the passenger side of the trailer, completely invisible to the driver's mirrors. He moved with a silent, fluid grace that didn't seem real. He was at the trailer's locking mechanism. It was a heavy-duty refrigeration unit. This is ridiculous, the driver grumbled, handing down a sheaf of papers. I'm carrying priority medical supplies. This truck can't be stopped. Medical supplies? Sure, I said, pretending to scan the page. Yeah, I'm not seeing you on here. Figures. Let me try to call my supervisor. Signal's terrible up here. I heard a faint, sharp click in my earpiece. Vito. Problem, his voice whispered, so low it was just a vibration in my ear. It's not the keypad lock from the manifest. They swapped it. It's a mechanical dial, a high-security Sergeant and Greenleaf. My blood ran cold. He couldn't brute force that, not quickly. I just can't get a signal, I said loudly to the driver, tapping my phone for show. Stupid bridge. Sir, can you just turn your engine off for a second? Sometimes the interference from the diesel, it just messes with my phone. Turn it off. Are you nuts? I've got a reefer unit running. Lady, I can't kill the power. Just for 30 seconds. Sir, please. It's either that or we wait for my supervisor. And that could be an hour. I just need to make one call. He let out a string of curses, but I heard the deep rumble of the engine die, followed by the whir of the refrigeration unit shutting down. The sudden silence was shocking, broken only by the wind. Lila, Vito's voice was urgent, sharp in my ear. Can you do this, yes or no? Do what? I whispered, turning my back to the driver, pretending to get a better signal. "My father, when he was a locksmith," I whispered, the memory hitting me, sharp and sad. "Before he got sick, he taught me. Put your earpiece, put the comms mic right on the dial. Press it against the metal." I heard the faint scrape as he did it. "Okay, spin the dial right. Slowly, keep going." I closed my eyes. I wasn't on a bridge. I was in my father's dusty, cramped shop, the smell of metal shavings and oil in the air. "Listen, Lila, don't just hear it. Listen. The tumblers tell a story. You just have to be quiet enough to hear it." "Stop," I whispered. "Go left. Go past the first number. All the way around." I heard the faint, tiny click-click as the tumblers passed the gate. "Stop. Now back to the right, slowly." Click. It wasn't a sound. It was a feeling. A tiny, perfect click of finality. "That's it," I breathed. "Pull the handle." I heard a heavy, solid thunk vibrate through the mic. "Hey, what was that noise?" the driver yelled from the cab. I spun around, smiling brightly. "I think my signal's back. All good." "Yep, my supervisor says you're clear to go once the flatbed moves. Sorry for the delay." I scrambled back to my utility truck as the driver swore and fired his engine back up. He was none the wiser. I drove 2 blocks off the bridge, parked the yellow truck in a designated construction zone, and walked. Vito's gray sedan slid to the curb half a block later, the back door already open. I dove in. "He'll notice the lock is broken," I said, breathless, as the car pulled silently into traffic. Vito was in the back, pulling off dark gloves. He has 5 minutes before he realizes he's driving an empty trailer. His team is already on its way to retrieve the contents. He tossed something heavy into my lap. It wasn't a hard drive. It wasn't a ledger. It was a small, black iron box. It looked old and stamped into the lid in dark red wax was the Hector seal, the crowned lion. My heart sank. They beat us again. It's another decoy. Just like the container. My voice was flat, all that for nothing. "Open it," Vito said. It wasn't locked. I lifted the heavy lid. Inside, there was no digital file, just paper, a thick stack of high-resolution satellite photographs, printed on glossy cardstock. I looked at the top one. It was a clean, aerial view of a building downtown, a gleaming tower of glass and steel, argent and wire. I read the name off the top. It's a bank, a private one. I flipped to the next photo. It was a blueprint. Basement level 3, vault. The last photo was a stark, black and white close-up of a wall of safety deposit boxes. "They put it in a bank," Vito said, his voice cold with a new respect. "Smart. They're letting a legitimate, high-security entity protect the ledger for them. We can't touch it." "No," I said, the pieces clicking into place. My brain felt sharp, clear. "No, they didn't. Look at the photo. There are, I don't know, maybe 500 boxes on that wall. They're not going to put the whole ledger in one box. It's too risky. What if the bank gets robbed? What if there's a fire? What if one employee gets greedy?" "What are you saying?" "I'm saying the ledger is data. They split it. They encrypted it and broke it into pieces. Maybe they encoded them onto bearer bonds or anonymous share certificates, something that looks harmless." The logic was flowing fast. They split the file into, say, 20 pieces. They put them in 20 different dummy accounts, 20 different boxes. That way, no single person can betray them. You need all 20 keys to put the puzzle back together. Vito was watching me, his expression intense. "We can't rob a bank. Lila, not argent and wire. It's too clean, too public. It would bring federal attention we don't want, the real feds." "So we don't rob them," I said, meeting his gaze. "Then how do we get the pieces?" "We make them move it." The plan formed, sharp and sudden. Hector's greatest strength is their fake legal front, right, the Bureau of Maritime Integrity. They use the threat of legal action to scare people, so we use it against them. Vito's eyes lit up. He understood. "A paper earthquake," he said, the corner of his mouth ticking up. "We can't hit the bank, but we can make Hector think the bank is about to be hit." We were back at Orion House. The atmosphere was electric. Mara Quinn was coordinating the assault. We can't tip off the real feds, but we can tip off everyone else. The plan was beautiful. It was a surgical strike, fought with information. Phase 1. An anonymous tip to the Lake Crest City Journal. A whisper about irregularities in the Argent and Wire private vaults, linked to offshore accounts. Phase 2. A dozen emails sent from spoofed addresses to the real state bank regulators, flagging transactions from Hector's known shell companies. Phase 3. The master stroke. Vito made a call, his voice crisp. I need you to reactivate our maritime integrity friends. Yes, the ones my team detained. Send a formal, flagged, high-priority request from their own server to Argent and Wire. Demand access to their client list under the Patriot Act, citing potential maritime terror financing. Mara actually grinned. You're using their own fake agency to launch a fake investigation against them. They'll panic, Vito said. Hector knows that Bureau is their shell. If the bank receives a formal request from them, Hector will know their cover is blown. They'll think one of their own people has flipped. They'll have no choice. They have to pull the assets. Tonight. So we hit the bank, I said, looking at the blueprint. Basement level 3. No, Vito said. We hit the transport. They'll be vulnerable when they move it. They'll be on the street. No, that's wrong too, I argued. Standing up, the confidence felt new, but solid. Think, they're panicked. They're not going to move it in a slow, obvious armored car. They're not going to risk a firefight in the street. They're going to move it legally. They'll send their lawyers, a legal escort. They'll put the pieces in 20 different briefcases and have 20 different junior associates walk them out the front door, right past the police. Vito and Mara were staring at me. They'll have a consolidation point, I pressed, a safe house nearby. We don't hit the bank. We don't hit the street. We follow the lawyers. Vito held my gaze for a long, silent moment. Mara, get me eyes on every lawyer known to be on Hector's payroll. Now. He turned back to me. The ops center was a blur of motion around us, but we were in that same quiet bubble again. You're not a waitress, Lila, he said, his voice very low. I'm a fast learner. You'll need this. He held up something that glittered in the blue light of the servers. It was an earring. A tiny, simple silver stud. It's a mic, he said. High gain, proximity-based. You'll be in the lobby of the bank. You're just a girl waiting for a rideshare. You'll watch them come out. You'll identify the carriers. I reached for it, but my fingers were clumsy. My adrenaline was starting to fade. My hands are shaking. Here. He stepped in close, closer than he had to. He took the earring from my palm. His fingers were warm as he gently brushed my hair back from my ear. The whole world compressed, the noise of the servers, Mara's voice, the tension it all faded. I could smell the faint, clean scent of his shirt, the same cedar from the hotel. I could see the absolute, unwavering focus in his eyes. He guided the post through the hole in my earlobe. His fingers lingered for a fraction of a second, his thumb brushing the sensitive skin just behind my ear. My breath hitched, my eyes locked on his. The fire from the lantern rooms, the slow burn of that kiss, the promise it was all right there, hanging in the air between us, a tangible, heavy thing. His gaze dropped to my lips. I saw him swallow, just once. The desire was so sharp, so sudden. It felt like a lurch in my stomach. I wanted to lean in. I wanted to finish what we'd started by that fire. He saw it in my eyes. He took a small, sharp breath and pulled his hand away, taking a deliberate, almost pained step back. The connection broke, leaving the air cold where he'd been. When this is done, and he said, his voice a low, rough promise, we'll talk. I nodded, the tiny microphone in my ear suddenly feeling like a piece of ice. Job first, I said. Job first. The paper earthquake hit Argent and Wire at 2 a.m. At 2:11 a.m., they moved. I was in the lobby. It was all cold marble and glass, offensively bright and smelled like expensive, citrus-based cleaner. I was just a girl in a hoodie and jeans, slouched in an uncomfortable leather chair, pretending my phone was fascinating. The tiny pearl stud earring Mike Vito had given me felt cold against my skin. The lawyers came. Not a panicked rush, but a calm, orderly, terrified procession. 6 young associates, all in identical dark suits, all pale, all carrying identical, locked, aluminum briefcases. They didn't look at each other. They walked straight out the revolving doors and split into 3 waiting black sedans. 3 vehicles, all tagged, Mara's voice whispered in my ear, moving south on Clark. I stood up, stretched like I'd been waiting for hours, and walked out into the cold night air. Vito's voice replaced Mara's. "Lila, you're not in the SUV. It's too heavy. You're with Finn." A motorcycle slid to the curb, so quiet it sounded like a bicycle. It was matte black, angular and clearly electric. The driver was the man from the bridge. Finn asked her. He didn't speak. He just held out a helmet. It was black, with a full, tinted visor. I climbed on behind him, my arms wrapping around his waist. It was solid, like holding onto a statue. The bike didn't rumble, it just surged. We accelerated into the sparse traffic, a silent black arrow in the night. We kept 2 blocks behind the convoy. I could see Vito's massive $3 million SUV in my peripheral vision. A block to our left, a lumbering beast of a shadow running a parallel course. We were the pincer. "Convoy is taking the Alder Tunnel," Mara reported. "Standard route to the Southside Junction." We followed them in. The tunnel was a tube of sickly, echoing, sodium yellow light. We were gaining on them. I could see all 3 sedans, 1, 2, 3. Halfway through, the world dissolved. The yellow lights in the tunnel flickered, dimmed, and went out, plunging us into absolute, terrifying darkness. Simultaneously, my earpiece let out a high-pitched, deafening squeal of static. Screech! I ripped the earring out, my ear ringing. The bike's digital dashboard went dead. Finn tapped the side of his helmet, a quick, frustrated gesture. Jamming. Hector had hit us with a wideband signal jammer. We were blind, deaf, and alone in the dark with 3 hostile vehicles. Finn had to slow down. We were coasting. Our only light, the dim red taillights of the sedan in front of us. But what about Vito? The SUV was blocks away, outside the jammer's range, but he couldn't see us. He had no idea what was happening. I couldn't be a passenger. I had a strip of 3 tiny button-sized GPS trackers in my pocket. Vito had called them dots. I tapped Finn's shoulder. I pointed forward, faster. He understood. The electric motor whined, and we surged forward, closing the gap. We wove past the 3rd car, then the 2nd. We were on the tail of the lead sedan. I had a piece of gum in my mouth, chewed tasteless hours ago out of pure nerves. I took it out, stuck one of the tiny black dots to the sticky wad, and leaned out. The wind was a solid wall. Even in the tunnel, we were feet from their bumper. The driver wouldn't see us, not in the dark, not with Finn staying in the blind spot. I reached out, my arm straining, and slapped the gum and tracker combination hard onto the metal, right above their license plate. Just as I pulled my hand back, the lights in the tunnel flashed, sputtered, and came back on. The end of the tunnel was rushing toward us. We emerged into the city, and the convoy had split. A 3-way interchange. The first car veered left, toward the downtown loop. The second car, the one I hadn't tagged, veered right, heading south. My car, the lead car, the one with my tracker on it, went straight toward the old industrial sector. I looked back, frantically. No SUV. Vito was gone. The jammer, the traffic, he'd lost us. He was blind. He was probably following one of the other 2 cars. We were alone. Finn slowed the bike, waiting at the interchange. Left, right, or straight. We had maybe 1 second to decide. I trusted the gum. I trusted my gut. I tapped his left shoulder. Straight. Finn didn't hesitate. He gunned the motor, and we plunged into the fog. The industrial sector was a ghost town at this hour. Fog was rolling in thick off the lake, swallowing the streetlights, turning the world into a gray, wet, silent maze. It was just us and the sedan's taillights, a faint red glow in the mist. We were on the old Clark Street Bridge, the one with the metal grate roadbed. The fog was so thick here I could barely see the sedan. And then I saw the taillights flicker. No, not flicker. The license plate, it was different. I blinked, my mind trying to catch up. A second ago, it was a standard Illinois plate. Now it was a commercial plate, yellow and black. He flipped it, I said, my voice swallowed by the wind. Finn, it's a plate flipper. A gadget. They were shedding their identity. I fumbled for the burner phone. My gloves made it clumsy. I was trying to get the camera open, trying to get a shot of the new plate through the fog. Focus. Just focus. The sedan's brake lights flashed. Instantly, no warning. Finn swore, a sharp, violent curse. He swerved hard. The bike's tires hit the wet metal grating of the bridge and lost all traction. We were sliding. That awful, stomach-dropping feeling of a vehicle completely out of control. Time slowed down. I saw the sedan's rear corner panel rushing toward my face. We hit. It wasn't a huge crash, a glancing, scraping blow, but it was enough. The bike went into a full fishtail, the back end trying to whip around and throw us. I screamed, but Finn was a machine. He wasn't a man. He was a part of the bike. He didn't fight the slide. He leaned into it. His left knee hit the pavement, scraping a long, brilliant tail of orange sparks off the metal grate. He used his own body as an outrigger, wrestling the bike's physics, and at the last possible second, he pulled it back upright. The bike stabilized, motor whining in protest. I was shaking so hard I could barely hold on. My heart had crawled up my throat and was trying to choke me. We were alive. Vito is going to kill me. The thought was sharp and absolute. He's going to find me, and he's going to personally strangle me for this. This was exactly the kind of reckless, unapproved risk he'd warned me about. The sedan didn't stop. It accelerated, its new fake identity disappearing into the fog. But they weren't gone. I had the shot, a blurry, terrible photo, but the plate number was visible, and the tracker was still live. I fumbled for the earring mic I'd shoved in my pocket. I put it back in, my ear still ringing. I switched it to the backup channel, encrypted, short range. Vito, I breathed, my voice a wreck. Are you there? He flipped. He's on a new plate. Lincoln Boy 932. The dot is still live. He's heading for the Graywell storage complex, off Archer. Silence, a long, agonizing burst of static. Then his voice, so tight with fury it barely sounded like him. We lost the other two. They were decoys. I'm 30 seconds behind you. Hold your position, Lila. Do not move. We rolled up to the Graywell storage complex. Our lights off. It was a massive, pre-war brick fortress, supposedly condemned. The sedan was there, parked by an open loading bay, its trunk open. The lawyers were gone. A new man was in charge. He was broad, with a shaved head and a scar that cut through his left eyebrow. He moved with a heavy, brutal confidence. This was not a lawyer. This was the man Hector trusted. This had to be Mace Torres. He was directing two men. They were moving a heavy, black reinforced Pelican case, the black box from the sedan's trunk, onto a dolly. They rolled it toward a massive, 6-foot-tall mobile safe that was sitting in the middle of the bay. This was it, the consolidation point. Headlights slashed through the fog, blinding. The $3 million SUV. It didn't cruise in. It slammed into the yard, fishtailing on the wet gravel and blocking the only exit. Vito was out before it even stopped moving. His eyes found me. I was still on the bike, my legs trembling. He took in the scene me, the scratched side of the bike, the sedan, Mace Torres. His gaze was a physical weight. It wasn't just anger. It was something else. A fierce, terrifying acknowledgement. You followed. You didn't die. You found him. We had a full conversation in that 1-second look. Mace Torres shouted and went for a weapon. Vito's team was already on him. Finn was off the bike, a blur of motion, Vito's driver, two others I didn't recognize. It was like the pier. Fast, Brutal. Precise. They didn't use guns. It was all holds, locks, and devastatingly efficient strikes. Vito didn't even join the fight. He walked straight past it, his eyes locked on the mobile safe. In seconds, Mace's men were on the ground, zip-tied. Finn had Mace in a hold, his arm pinned behind his back. "Lila!" Vito barked, his voice echoing in the bay. "The console!" I scrambled off the bike, my knees threatening to buckle. The safe was high-tech, its keypad glowing. "It's the same system," I said, my voice shaking, but my brain clear. "The container. They're arrogant. They're using the same logic." My fingers were clumsy in their gloves. I ripped them off. My hands were freezing, but I typed in the code. The L chess move I'd found. 0890. The keypad flashed green. The safe let out a heavy click. "Crown Lion," Mace Torres roared, even as Finn held him. Mace wasn't trying to escape. He slammed his free hand, the one with a heavy ring on it, against a red panic button on the wall of the loading bay. A new screen lit up on the safe, a countdown. Data purge initiated, corrupting drive, T-minus 180 seconds. A high-pitched whining sound started from inside the safe. "It's a thermal wipe," Mace laughed, a raw, ugly sound. "The drive is melting as we speak. You get nothing, Scarlatti, nothing." 170 seconds. Vito was already at the safe, jamming a crowbar from the SUV's trunk into the seam of the door. The steel was thick. It didn't budge. "We can't stop it," he snarled, throwing his weight against it. The whining was getting louder. The safe's metal was already warm to the touch. "No," I said, my mind racing. "No, we can't stop it, but we can freeze it." I looked at Finn, who was busy silencing Mace. "The bridge. The truck you were driving, the refrigerated unit, Finn, do you have the cryo?" Vito's head snapped toward me. He understood. "Finn, the contingency." Finn slammed Mace's head against the brick wall. The man went limp. Finn sprinted to the back of the SUV, tore open a concealed compartment, and pulled out a silver, insulated, high-pressure gas canister. Liquid nitrogen. "You brought," I started. "He's my contingency," Vito said, his voice tight. "The reefer unit was always Plan B. Get the hinges." 120 seconds. Vito and his driver jammed their crowbars into the safe's heavy hinges. They weren't trying to open the door. They were trying to create a gap. 90 seconds. The safe was hot now, the paint starting to bubble. 60 seconds. With a groan of tortured metal, the hinges buckled. A half-inch gap appeared at the top. "Now," Vito roared. Finn shoved the nozzle of the nitrogen tank into the gap and opened the valve. A violent, deafening hiss, an enormous cloud of white vapor exploded from the safe, instantly blanketing the loading bay. It was so cold it stung my face. The metal of the safe let out a high-pitched scream as the temperature plunged hundreds of degrees in seconds. The countdown timer on the console froze at 41 seconds and died. Silence. We all stood there, breathing clouds of vapor in the frigid air. Vito wedged his crowbar back in. This time, the frozen metal was brittle. With a crack like a gunshot, the lock shattered. He tore the door open. Inside, the black box was coated in a thick, white layer of frost, the data drive, the self-destruct mechanism. Everything was frozen solid, suspended in time. Mara's voice crackled in Vito's comms, which were working again. "Vito, I have a signal. What's your status?" Vito reached in with a gloved hand and carefully lifted the frozen case. He looked at me, his eyes unreadable in the chaos. "Mara," he said, "we have the package. It's partial. It looks like we have 1/3 of the ledger. The other 2 are still in the wind." The drive back to the lantern rooms was a silent, vibrating hum. The SUV's engine was a low growl, but the real noise was in my head, the shriek of the liquid nitrogen, the crack of the frozen lock, the dead, dark countdown timer frozen at 41 seconds. Mara's team, dressed in black tech uniforms, had met us at a rendezvous point. They took the frosted, heavy case 1/3 of the ledger with the reverence of priests handling a holy relic, and then we were alone. We re-entered the corner suite. The fire was still going, a low, steady flame. The storm had passed, leaving the windows clear, the city lights glittering cold and sharp. I was running on fumes, a hollowed-out, buzzing exhaustion. Vito was the same. He pulled off the heavy tactical coat he'd worn for the Graywell raid. He was just in the black shirt again, his sleeves pushed up to his forearms. He was rolling his shoulders, trying to work out the tension. And that's when I saw it. "You're hurt." He glanced down at his left hand. A long, angry red scratch ran across his knuckles, beaded with blood. It must have happened when he jammed the crowbar into the safe's hinges. "It's nothing," Wow, he said, dismissing it. "Sit down, Vito." He actually looked surprised. I'd used his name, and it was an order. I didn't wait for him to obey. I went into the lavish bathroom, found the white metal first aid kit, and came back. He was sitting on the edge of the sofa, watching me, his face unreadable in the firelight. I knelt on the rug in front of him, just as he had knelt for me hours, lifetimes ago. I took his hand. It was large, warm, and rough. A hand that could break things, or, as I'd learned, be impossibly gentle. I opened the antiseptic wipe, the chemical smell sharp in the warm room. "This might sting," I said. As I cleaned the wound, his hand was steady in mine. He wasn't looking at the scratch. He was looking at me, his gaze so intense it felt like a physical touch. "You were reckless tonight," he said, his voice quiet. I kept my eyes on his hand. It worked. "The motorcycle, the chase, you could have been killed. Lila." "But I wasn't, and I got the plate." "I lost you," he said. The words were flat, but they held a universe of something else. "The jammer went up, and you were gone. You and Finn. I knew you'd find us." I pressed a small, clean bandage over his knuckles, my fingers lingering on his skin. He turned his hand over, his fingers closing gently around my wrist. He wasn't stopping me. He was holding me. "I chose not to abandon you at Pier 9. That first night," he said, his voice a low confession. I should have let you go. Let you be the waitress who got scared. It would have been cleaner." I finally looked up, meeting his eyes. "I know. From the first minute, in the car, when you gave the money back, I knew you were different. You weren't breakable." "I was terrified," I whispered. "I'm still terrified. I'm just better at multitasking now." A small, sad smile touched his lips. "Me too." I finished with his hand, but neither of us moved. I was still kneeling, and he was still holding my wrist. The air between us was thick with every unspoken word from the last 3 days. "So what now?" I asked. "We have one piece of the puzzle. What happens when we get the other two? When Hector is finally gone?" He let go of my wrist and leaned back, staring into the fire. "Orion operates in the light. We stabilize the port. We end what they started, permanently. We use the ledger to expose every politician, every agency on their payroll. And me." My voice was small. "What happens to me? Am I just an asset you don't need anymore? Do I go back to the Hearth and Harbor?" He turned his head, his steel gray eyes finding mine. "Is that what you want?" "I don't know what I want." "If you want your freedom, Lila, you have it," he said, and his voice was absolute. "The moment this is over, you walk away. I will clear your aunt's medical debt, all of it. I will set you up in a new city. You will be free. I will not stop you." The thought of it leaving, walking away, it should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like falling. "And if I don't want to go?" I whispered. The air snapped. The pull, the invisible tether that had been between us since he draped his jacket over my shoulders, it was suddenly an unbearable, undeniable force. He stood up from the sofa. I rose from my knees. We were in the center of the room, standing in the warm pool of the firelight. The promise he'd made in the ops center, when this is over, it was hanging between us. This part was over. We were alive. We were safe. I didn't wait for him to ask. I didn't wait for permission. I closed the last 2 feet between us. I put my hands on his chest, feeling the solid, steady beat of his heart under my palm. "Vito," I said. He met me halfway. This wasn't the tentative, questioning kiss from before. This was a confirmation. His hands came up, not to my face, but to my shoulders, his grip firm, grounding. He wasn't asking, he was answering. The kiss was deep. It was certain. It was the taste of ginger and fire, of adrenaline and the cold night, all melting into a desperate, profound relief. It wasn't a discovery. It was a recognition. His hands slid from my shoulders down my back, pulling me flush against him. I wasn't an asset. I wasn't a variable. I was his. In that moment, I was his. My own arms wrapped around his neck, my fingers tangling in the hair at his nape. He was solid, real, and he was here. He was safe. He broke the kiss, but only to rest his forehead against mine, his breathing ragged. "Lila," he whispered, his voice rough. It was a prayer and a curse, all in one. I was still wearing the hoodie and jeans from the lobby and the scratchy wool blanket he'd given me before. It felt like too many layers. His hands moved to the zipper of my hoodie. He didn't pull it. He just rested his fingers there, a silent, burning question against my sternum. His eyes held mine. "Is this okay?" My heart was hammering so hard I thought it would break. I gave him my answer. I covered his hand with my own, and together, we pulled the zipper down. The hoodie slid off my shoulders, pooling at my waist. He didn't move. He just looked at me, his gaze tracing the line of my collarbone, the curve of my neck, then, slowly, as if he were touching something priceless, his warm, calloused hands slid from my shoulders, up my throat, to cup my face. My skin was on fire, 1,000 tiny, warm prickles, everywhere he touched, everywhere he looked. He kissed me again, and this time, the world fell away. We stumbled, moving as one, away from the center of the room and collapsing onto the thick plush rug in front of the fireplace. We were a tangle of limbs, of desperate, careful hands. His lips moved from my mouth to my jaw, tracing a line of fire down my throat. My hands were in his hair, on his back, feeling the solid, powerful muscles beneath his shirt. It was a slow, consuming burn. His touch was respectful, never straying, never taking. Every movement was a question, every response from me a new, breathless answer. The air was warm, filled with the crackle of the fire and the sound of our breathing. The windows, facing the cold lake, began to fog, sealing us in our own private, heated world. There was no thought of Hector, no ledgers, no danger. There was only this, the overwhelming, undeniable, terrifying safety of his arms. The world narrowed to this man, this fire, this moment. Later, much later, the fire had burned down to glowing, red-gold embers. The storm had passed, and the first faint, bruised purple light of dawn was staining the sky. We were lying on the rug, tangled in the heavy wool blanket. We weren't touching. Not really, just lying opposite each other, breathing in the same quiet air. "I'm afraid," I whispered, my voice sounding strange and rough in the stillness. He opened his eyes. His face in the soft light was unguarded, younger, of me. "No," I shook my head, "of this, of being the one thing they can find, the one person you have to protect. I'm afraid of being your Achilles heel." He was silent for a long time, just watching me. "Everyone has one, Lila." "What's yours?" I asked. He let out a long breath, staring at the ceiling. "I'm afraid of what I'm willing to do to protect what's mine. I'm afraid of becoming the monster they all say I am, the one my father hated." "You're not a monster, Vito," I said, my voice fierce. I reached out, my fingers tracing the scar by his eyebrow, the one I'd seen at the warehouse. "You haven't seen me when I'm cornered," he said, his voice grim. He closed his eyes, leaning into my touch. In the silence, a phone buzzed. It was sharp, violent, and clinical. It shattered the moment. It was his, the encrypted burner. In an instant, he was gone. The man who was afraid was replaced by the boss. He sat up, the blanket falling away. He grabbed the phone. Mara. He listened. His entire body went tense. The hard, tactical lines were back. Where? A pause. Understood. He hung up and looked at me. The vulnerability was gone, sealed behind that mask of steel. What is it? I asked, already pulling the robe on, my heart sinking. Ledger, part 2, he said, his voice flat. He was already standing, pulling on his shirt. Hector's moving it, but they're not hiding it. They're laundering it. What do you mean? They're hiding it in plain sight. They've disguised the drive, or the data, as part of a lot at a charity auction. Tonight, the Harbor Lights Gala, the most public, most secure, high society event in Lake Crest. You're staying here, he said. It wasn't a request. You're exhausted. You're not trained for a crowd like that. It's too public. Too many variables. I stood up, cinching the belt of the robe. No! He stopped, his hand on the door. Lila, that is an order. I don't care. I walked right up to him. You need me. What's the lock? What's the code? They're arrogant, Vito. They're using the L-chess logic again. I know it. You need someone to see the pattern. I'm the only one who's cracked it twice. You need my brain, not my non-existent training. He stared down at me, his jaw tight. The muscle was jumping. He was furious. And he knew I was right. Fine, he bit out. But you do not leave my side. Not for 1 second. You are a ghost. You are my shadow. Understood. Understood. He went to his tactical bag by the door and pulled out a small, velvet box. Inside wasn't a weapon. It was a bracelet, a delicate silver chain. It looked real. This is a proximity alarm, see, he said, his voice all business again. He took my wrist. It's tethered to my watch. You move more than 10 meters 30 feet away from me, and my team will have your location. You do not go beyond the tether. He fastened it. The cold metal snapped shut around my wrist. It felt heavier than a shackle. He was dressed. I was in a robe. The intimacy of the night felt 1,000 miles away, separated by the cold, harsh light of the new day. We were back to being the boss and the asset. But as we stood at the door, ready to leave, he paused. He looked at me, and for a second the mask slipped. I saw the man from the fire. Lila, he said, his voice low and serious. When this is over, truly over. I met his gaze. The promise was still there. I know, Vito, I whispered. We talk about us. I nodded, touching the cold bracelet on my wrist. Job first. The Harbor Lights Gala wasn't just bright. It was blinding. After the raw, exhausting night, the sudden plunge into Lake Crest's high society felt like surfacing too fast. We had spent the day in separate, sterile rooms at the Lantern. Mara Quinn had appeared with a garment bag, a makeup artist, and a new, nearly invisible communications setup. You're not his shadow tonight, Lila, she'd said, her voice crisp. You're his partner. You're the new, mysterious face on his arm. No one will dare question you, which means you can get closer than any of my men. Now, standing on the brightly lit pier, I understood. The pier was unrecognizable, transformed from a rotted, abandoned structure to a wonderland of glowing paper lanterns and white tents. A live band played upbeat swing music, and the air smelled of salt, champagne, and expensive grilled seafood. It was Lake Crest pretending to be safe, pretending to be normal. I was in a simple, floor-length dress of deep sapphire blue. My hair was clipped back. I was an accessory, but I was an accessory who knew how to pick a lock with her ears. Vito was devastating. He wasn't in a suit. He was in a dark, perfectly tailored vest over a crisp white shirt, his sleeves rolled up to his forearms. He looked less like a mob boss and more like a rugged, intensely wealthy benefactor, which was, of course, the point. His hand was a warm, firm pressure on the small of my back. He guided me through the crowd, and the crowd, it just parted. The proximity alarm, he murmured, his breath warm against my ear as he leaned in, pretending to point out a boat on the water. It's set 10 meters, 30 feet. Do not break the tether, Lila, not for anything. I won't, I whispered. The delicate silver bracelet on my wrist felt heavier than a set of handcuffs. We found the auction tent. It was filled with glass cases, the maritime memorabilia section, and there, in the center, was the target. An antique brass sextant. It was beautiful, gleaming under the spotlight, resting on a bed of royal blue velvet. That's our prize, I murmured. Mace Torres, Vito said, his voice dropping. 2 o'clock by the Raw Bar, disguised as a collector. I glanced. It was him, the man from the loading bay, Mace. He was wearing a loud blazer and laughing with a city councilman. He was here to ensure his laundering went smoothly. And the gray suits, I added. By the entrance to the tent, they're not even pretending anymore. They're security. Hector is controlling the entire tent, Vito said, which means the ledger is definitely in that box. We approached the display. Mara's intel had been precise. The ledger wasn't the sextant itself. It was hidden inside the monocular, the small brass spyglass attached to the frame. Our job wasn't to steal the whole thing. It was to swap the real spyglass with a perfect, hollow duplicate. The clasp, I whispered, leaning in as if admiring the craftsmanship. It's not a key. It's a dial. 4 digits. The L chess code, Vito said. Can you do it? 0890, I breathed. Yes, but not with them all watching. The music is about to hit its crescendo, Vito said, checking his watch. The auctioneer is starting the main event. They'll be distracted. You have 30 seconds. I'll block the view. He was right. A drum roll started. The auctioneer, a fast-talking man on a small stage, announced the next big-ticket item, a week on a yacht. The crowd, including Mace, turned their attention to the stage. Vito stepped in front of me, his back to the room, effectively shielding me from view. He pretended to examine a ship's wheel on the wall, creating a solid, dark wall of protection. Now, Lila. My heart was in my throat. I reached a trembling hand into the glass case. The latch was unlocked. Just as Mara had predicted, my fingers found the tiny, 4-digit dial on the sextant's frame. My fingers, no longer cold and clumsy, were steady. 0, right, 8, left, past 0, 9, right, past 8, 0, left. A click, so faint, I almost missed it. The clasp released. I lifted the heavy, real spyglass from my small, beaded clutch. I pulled the duplicate. It was a perfect match, identical in weight and appearance. I clicked the fake one into place. I had the real one, part 2 of the ledger in my hand. I slid it into my clutch. Done. I pulled my hand out of the case. Vito, I whispered. Done. He started to turn, and at that exact second, the silver bracelet on my wrist vibrated, a short, sharp buzz. A hand grabbed my elbow, not Vito's. It was a woman. She was tall, with hair so pale blonde it was almost white. She was in a stunning, backless silver dress. One sound, she whispered, her voice like cold silk. And I have the man at the Raw Bar put a bullet in your aunt's attending physician. Don't I know you? Let's get a drink. She smiled, a bright, terrifying smile for the crowd, and pulled me. She was pulling me away from Vito. The bracelet vibrated again, 10 meters. I stumbled. Vito turned, his eyes, his steel-gray eyes, locked on mine. He saw me. He saw the woman. He saw the panic. His face went from benefactor to executioner in a nanosecond. Smile, Lila, the woman hissed, her grip like a vice. We're old friends. She was dragging me out of the tent, away from the auction, toward the darker end of the pier. I had to choose, my promise to Vito or the threat to Aunt May. I turned my head, my eyes still locked on his. I tapped my earring mic, the one he'd given me, the one that linked only to him. Separated, I whispered, the words lost in the swing music. Pulling to the east gate, I didn't know if he got it. The woman was strong, and she was moving fast. We were out of the tent, weaving through the laughing, drinking crowds. Behind me, I heard a sudden commotion, a crash of glass, a man shouting. Mace sees the swap, the woman hissed, a flicker of annoyance in her eyes. He was supposed to be the distraction. No matter. This way. Vito had gotten my message. He'd created a diversion. He'd sent Finn, or one of his men, to intercept Mace, to start the chaos, to give me a window. He was trusting me to handle my problem. The woman was pulling me toward a dark service entrance, away from the lanterns. East Gate. Where are we going? I asked, stumbling, trying to sound terrified. You're going to tell me what you know, and then you're going to disappear. She was so focused on getting me to the dark exit. She didn't notice I was dragging my feet, guiding her. Not this way, I said, pulling back. The cameras, they'll see us. The greenhouses, over there. It's darker. She paused, surprised by my sudden, lucid suggestion. Smart, very smart. She changed direction, shoving me toward a long, low, glass structure I'd noticed earlier. The Pier's Botanical Nursery, a hothouse. She pushed me through the door. The air inside was a heavy, wet blanket, thick, hot and humid, smelling of damp earth and orchids. It was dark. The only light, the faint, ghostly glow from the gala outside, filtering through the fogged-up glass. She shoved me against a rack of pots, and for the first time, her smile dropped. Who are you? I'm a waitress, I panted. Don't lie to me. She pulled a small, thin blade from a sheath strapped to her thigh. You're with Scarlatti. What's the play? What's the L chess code? So she knew. I don't know what you're talking about, I stammered, my eyes darting around. You're protecting him, she sneered. He's not worth it. He's just a man. But your aunt, she's very real. And she's very fragile. She was standing between me and the door, the only way out. He's not my problem, I said, trying to control my breathing. You are. Cute, she lunged. She was fast, but she wasn't Vito. She wasn't clean. She was angry. I didn't try to fight her. I used the self-defense my aunt, a former nurse who'd seen too much in the ER, had drilled into me. Leverage. Lila, not strength. Use what they give you. As she came in with the knife, I didn't back away. I stepped in, grabbing her wrist with both my hands, just as Aunt May had taught me. I turned, dropping my weight, using her own forward momentum. She was stronger than me, but physics was stronger than her. She flew over my hip, landing hard on the concrete floor with a grunt of surprised pain. The knife skittered away into the darkness under a potting bench. I didn't go for it. I ran to the wall, to the irrigation system. I grabbed the main valve for the overhead misters and cranked it hard to the left. A deafening ass filled the greenhouse. A thick, cold fog of water vapor instantly blasted from the ceiling, soaking both of us in seconds. The glass walls, already fogged, became completely opaque. The gala lights vanished. We were in a dark, wet, screaming cloud. You, she shrieked, blinded. I could hear her scrambling, coughing. I moved. I grabbed a heavy, wet bag of potting soil. Where are you? She yelled, swinging wildly. I dropped the bag. It hit the concrete with a heavy, wet thud. She spun toward the sound, thinking it was me. I came from the other side. I tackled her at the knees. We went down in a tangle of wet clothes and mud. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I was trying to hold her. I got her arm twisted behind her back, my knee planted firmly in the center of her spine. I was covered in mud. My sapphire blue dress was ruined, but I had her. It's over, I panted, my mouth next to her ear. The ledger piece is gone. Vito's team has Mace. You've lost. She bucked, trying to throw me. You don't know anything. This wasn't about the sextant. The sextant was a decoy. My blood went cold. I froze. What? She was breathing in huge, ragged gasps, half sobbing, half laughing. You idiot. You think we'd put the real ledger in an auction? We just needed Scarlatti here. We needed his full attention on this pier. We needed his little pet to be here with him. A decoy for what? I pressed her arm harder, the pain making her hiss. The final piece, she screamed. The master ledger. The one we couldn't move from the bank. What about it? While your boss is here, playing dress-up with his waitress, our real team is collecting the final piece. They're moving it. Right now. My mind was racing. Where? How? You're not that smart, "You threatened my aunt," I whispered, my voice turning to ice. "You put her in this? Where are they moving it?" "It's not at the port," she stammered, her confidence breaking. "It's in a mobile server, secure. They're moving it to a new hard site." "Where is it?" "I don't know. It's in an ambulance. It's the perfect cover. No one stops an ambulance." My heart stopped. An ambulance? A mobile server? The threat against Aunt May? An ambulance heading to St. Bridget Mercy Pavilion. It all clicked. It wasn't a threat. It was a plan. "They're not just moving it," I said, the realization dawning. Cold and horrific. "They're using the ambulance as a Trojan horse. They're not just going to any hard site. They're going to St. Bridget's." "How did you know that?" she gasped. "Because they're not just going for the ledger," I said, getting off her, my entire body numb. "They're going for my aunt. They're going to use her as a shield to protect the server. They're turning Vito's fortress into their own." The greenhouse door slammed open. A dark shape filled the frame, silhouetted against the distant, flashing blue and red lights of real police cars arriving to handle the commotion. Vito. He took in the scene, the hissing steam, the mud, the platinum blonde woman, crumpled on the floor, me, soaked, filthy, but standing. His eyes locked on mine. In my hand, I was still clutching my beaded clutch bag, the one that held part 2 of the ledger. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. His gaze was a steel cable, connecting us across the room. He saw I was safe. He saw I had won. But he also saw the look on my face. "Vito," I said, my voice shaking. "It was a feint, all of it." He was at my side in 2 strides, his hand on my arm, his eyes scanning me for injuries. "The gala, the sexton, it was all a diversion." "A diversion for what? Lila?" I looked up at him. The man who had promised to protect my aunt, the man I had. "They're hitting the hospital," I said. "They're using a fake ambulance, and they're going after Aunt May. The final piece of the ledger, it's on its way to her room. Right now." The night didn't just fall on St. Bridget Mercy Pavilion. It crashed, the ambulance carrying me and Vito, still in our ruined gala clothes, screamed through the city. We arrived to a scene of controlled, cold chaos. The hospital was bathed in the antiseptic, silver-white glow of its own neon signs. Vito was on his comms before his feet hit the pavement. "Finn, Mace's team is already inside. They're going for the East Wing. Cardiac, no gunfire. I want non-lethal takedowns only. Civilian priority. Every patient, every nurse is to be protected. The ledger is second, understood." I was already moving, pulling a set of blue hospital scrubs from a supply closet over my mud-stained dress. "Aunt May's room is 412. The main elevators are keycard access. They'll use the service stairs. I know the way." We moved, not a charge, but a silent, swift infiltration. Vito, me, Finn, and 2 others from his team. The service corridors smelled of bleach and old coffee. We burst through the double doors into the main emergency bay. And there he was, Mace Torres. He wasn't running, and he was waiting. He was in full black tactical gear, standing beside the open doors of a fake ambulance. It wasn't just an ambulance. It was a mobile server bank. "Scarlatti," Mace sneered. He wasn't holding a weapon. He was holding a small digital detonator. "Right on time. You're too late." "It's over, Mace," Vito said. His voice was calm, but his body was coiled. He was a panther, judging the distance. He moved, just slightly, to keep himself between Mace and the main hospital doors. "It's just beginning." Mace laughed, a raw, ugly sound. "My team is already upstairs, securing our final insurance policy. Your pet's fragile aunt, and this," he patted the glowing server rack inside the ambulance. "This is the master ledger, but I can't let you have it. It's on a thermal wipe. 180 seconds. Vito, then it all turns to glass." A high-pitched whine started from the server. A red digital timer on the rack began to count down. 180. 179. He was stalling. He was trying to keep Vito here, in the bay, while his men grabbed Aunt May. I didn't wait. Vito was the target. Mace's eyes were locked on him. I ran. I sprinted from behind Vito, breaking cover, and dove straight for the open doors of the ambulance. "Lila, no!" Vito roared. I landed on the metal floor. The server was screaming. The countdown was fast. 165. The keypad, it was there, next to the drive, the same arrogant, stupid lock. My fingers flew, my hands weren't shaking. Not anymore. 0, 8, 9, 0. The panel clicked. Access granted. It snapped open, revealing a mass of wires. 150. I saw the fuse cluster for the detonator charge. I yanked the main one. The bomb was disarmed, but the thermal wipe, the high-pitched whine continued. The countdown didn't stop. It was still melting itself from the inside out. "Finn!" I screamed from inside the van. "The nitrogen, the contingency, it's a thermal wipe." I saw the override port, the one for the external cryo bridge. I grabbed the heavy cable Finn had prepared, the one from the SUV. 130. Mace shrieked in rage. "You can't plan B kill the power. Kill it now." And the world ended. Every light in the hospital died, the ER bay, the street lights, the glowing server, the high-pitched whine. Everything plunged into absolute, profound darkness. Hector had cut the main power grid to the entire east wing. A 10-second lag, that's what Mara's intel had said. 10 seconds for the hospital's private backup generators to kick in. In the dark, I was suddenly aware of the silver bracelet on my wrist, the proximity alarm. Its tiny green light was out. The tether was broken. I was invisible. I heard a sound, a heavy footstep scrambling into the ambulance. Not Vito. I felt the air shift, a heavy, whistling sound, a baton, swung hard at my head. I didn't even have time to breathe. A body slammed into me, a solid, heavy weight that tackled me from the server rack, crushing me against the floor. It was Vito. I heard a sickening, wet thud as the baton connected with his back. He grunted, a deep, agonized sound, but his body never moved. He was a solid, living shield over me. In the dark, I'd heard the clatter of his weapon on the pavement. He had seen the attack. He had seen me, unprotected, and he had thrown his gun away to dive, unarmed, to take the hit that was meant for me. The emergency lights kicked in, dim, red, auxiliary power. Vito was a heavy weight on top of me. Mace Torres was standing in the ambulance door, his face a mask of victory. He had a gun, a real one, and it was pointed right at my head. Vito tried to push himself up, his face pale and tight with pain. He was trapped. "Choose Scarlatti," Mace whispered, his voice shaking with triumph. "The ledger or her. The data wipe is rebooting. You have 60 seconds when the main power comes back. You can't save both." The knot, the final, impossible choice. If he moved, Mace would shoot me. If he stayed, the ledger, his father's legacy, his entire life's work would melt. Vito looked at me. I was pinned beneath him, my eyes wide. Slowly, his face a mask of agony, Vito raised his hands. He rolled off me, standing up, deliberately placing his unarmed body between me and Mace's gun. "Let her go," Vito said, his voice a low, pained rasp. "She's not part of this. She's a civilian. Let her walk out." He took a step toward Mace. "Take me," Vito said. "Me for the ledger. A fair trade. Let her go." My heart stopped. He was surrendering. He was giving himself up. He was sacrificing everything, the game, the port, his revenge, for me. In that second, I saw him. Not the boss, not the killer, just the man who wouldn't choose who got eaten, the man who had just chosen to be devoured, to set me free. Mace laughed, a high, ugly sound. I knew it. She is your weakness. You're soft. You always... The world vanished in a cloud of white. Not smoke. The hospital's chemical fire suppression system. Mara, she'd hacked the building. Mace was blinded, screaming, coughing in the choking, inert powder. What no? A sharp blue crack. Finn Astor, a ghost in the white cloud, dropped Mace with a high-voltage taser. Mace convulsed and went down. The main power lights flickered and roared back to life. The server's high-pitched whine screamed. The red timer reappeared. 41 seconds, Lila now, Vito roared, his voice hoarse from the powder. I scrambled back to the console. The cable was in my hand. 39. Finn was there, shoving the nozzle of the nitrogen tank into my hands. 35. I jammed the cable into the port. I slammed the nozzle against the heatsink. Hit it! I twisted the valve. The world turned freezing, the deafening hiss, the explosion of white vapor. The timer flashed. 20, 10, 5. The screen flickered. 0. It froze. The whine died. We got it. The data was intact. We had everything. The white powder began to settle, and new lights, blue and red, filled the bay. The real police, the ones who weren't on Hector's payroll. Mara had sent the complete frozen ledger, the proof, the names, the bank accounts to a clean detective. The second our system registered, the data was secure. It was over. Aunt May, I breathed. Vito was already pulling me from the frozen, white-dusted ambulance. We ran. Up the service stairs, ignoring the chaos, ignoring the cops cuffing Mace's team. 4th floor, her room. The 2 Orion guards were standing, looking bewildered. I pushed past them. The room was quiet. She was asleep, pale, peaceful. The surgery was a success. She was safe. Mace's team had never made it past Finn's blockade on the 2nd floor. I collapsed against the guardrail of her bed, my legs gone. I put my head down, and for the first time, I just let go. I felt a hand on my back, gentle, strong, Vito. I stood up. I turned. He was a wreck. His shirt was torn, his back already a roadmap of purple bruising. He was covered in sweat and white powder. I didn't care. I launched myself at him. I threw my arms around his neck, and he grabbed me, his arms like steel bands, lifting me off the floor, crushing me to him. He held me so tight I couldn't breathe, and I kissed him. In the middle of the St. Bridget cardiac ward, in front of God and his men. I kissed him. It wasn't sweet. It was raw. It was a desperate primal. Thank you for being alive. It tasted of victory and metal and the promise he'd kept. The sun was rising. We were on the roof of Orion House, the city glowing pink and gold below. It's done, Mara said, closing her laptop. The Grand Lakes Tribunal has the complete ledger. Hector's assets are frozen, coast to coast. They're arresting his shell company partners as we speak. It was over. Vito turned to me. He looked tired and at peace. I'm leaving Lakecrest, he said quietly. My heart, which had been soaring, plummeted. Oh. Not to run, he said, taking my hand. His skin was warm. To build. I'm opening a restaurant, up north, Hearth and Harbor, North Pier. I stared at him. A restaurant. I've acquired a chef. He needs a partner, a manager, someone who knows the business, someone who isn't afraid to tell the boss he's wrong. He was offering me a new life. I can't be normal, Lila, he said, his voice raw. The world, it doesn't let me. But I can be a shield. You can be you. I just block the wind. I looked at him, the man who had offered his life for mine. I'll go, I said, on 2 conditions. He raised an eyebrow. The old Vito, the boss, back for a second. 1, I said, transparency. No more secrets. You tell me the truth, always. Agreed. And 2, we set boundaries, moral lines. We decide, together, what we won't cross. He smiled, a real, slow smile. Agreed. The last scene, my old, crumbling apartment building. The $3 million SUV is parked at the curb, idling, its engine a silent purr. I walk out the front door. I'm not running. I'm not carrying a bag. Vito's driver is there. He moves to open the back door. I smile. It's okay, thanks, I've got it. I pull a key from my own pocket. I press the button. The SUV chirps. I open the passenger door and slide in, beside him. He looks at me, the dawn light in his steel eyes. That night at the Hearth and Harbor, I whisper as he puts the car in gear, I paid your bill. Tonight, you paid for my life. He takes my hand, his bandaged knuckles brushing mine. He lifts my hand to his lips and kisses it, sealing our new contract, and we drive, not into the shadows, but into the sunrise. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from, so drop a comment below and let's share our thoughts. Please subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, like this video, and give it a huge boost by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.